today. Thank you all for being here. We will start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Dexter.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Carr.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Schroman Warren.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Suggs.
Here.
Manager West.
Present.
Acting City Attorney Soto.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. If you can please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we have a proclamation this evening, so I'm going to ask Lower Elwha Clallam Tribal Chairwoman Frances Charles to meet me in front, and if you want to bring other folks with you, please feel free. All right, this is an important month in Port Angeles in particular. That's where we're going to focus tonight. So tonight I'm going to read a proclamation recognizing the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas the city strives to promote tolerance, understanding, and friendship, and to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination. And whereas the city of Port Angeles recognizes that it sits on Clallam ancestral lands and recognizes that Clallam people have lived on this land since time immemorial. And whereas the city values the many contributions Indigenous people have made to our community with their knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and deep cultural influences that have shaped the character of our city. And whereas the city of Port Angeles recognizes that systemic racism toward Indigenous people perpetuates high rates of poverty and income inequality, exacerbating health, education, and social crises. And whereas the city of Port Angeles, along with the state and a number of Washington cities, permanently recognize the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day, creating an opportunity to promote appreciation, tolerance, understanding, friendship, and partnership among all peoples. And whereas this year, the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe hosted the annual Tribal Canoe Journey for 2025. The Paddle to Elwha recognizes the traditional coastal journey taken by tribal canoe families traveling to the lands of the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe. The voyage spanned hundreds of miles along the Salish Sea, with canoes launching from tribal territories in Washington, British Columbia, and beyond. This year, the final landing took place at the mouth of the Elwha River in Port Angeles. And whereas on July 21st, 2020, the City Council adopted Ordinance 3660, adding Chapter 1.30 to the Port Angeles Municipal Code, declaring the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day in Port Angeles. This ordinance will long be a valuable addition to the code, and we look forward to paying our respects to the historical importance this day represents, not only on the day of, but every day. Now, therefore, I, Kate Dexter, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of Port Angeles, do hereby recognize October 13th, 2025 as Indigenous Peoples Day in Port Angeles, and encourage all to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of the Indigenous peoples of our region, to learn more about the history of Indigenous peoples and their cultures, and to continue efforts to promote well-being and growth of our Indigenous community. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Right, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to say some words if you'd like to.
Definitely. I will not pause on that one. Well, first I want to thank John. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that part. Sorry I had to miss your opening. Really, this is an honor in regards to what's taken place here through the processes of recognizing Indigenous Day, because that's something that we really strive on for our kids, our youth, our elders, and having that opportunity for them to take that into heart and then really recognizing it through the educational process and the teachings that we have. And what we have done successfully with the canoe journey, I'll start there through that process. That was a chore and a half itself. I think we all finally got energized through the whole processes of it on that one. But I do want to recognize the city of Port Angeles, the council, in regards to the staff, our law enforcement, the city, the council, the tribal, city, and county law enforcement, the first responders, and in regards to helping us through that, through the volunteer parts of it. Not only that with the clinics and the hospitals, but there were so many other people behind the scene because we couldn't have done it without the guidance and the assistance that we had received from Port Angeles for all of the volunteers, even the tribes that had stepped forward. And I can say that we made it through the spill. That was our first challenge. The second one was the tsunami warning. And the third one was the weather itself on that part of it. So Mother Nature had challenged us in many ways on that one, and we were successful and happy to proceed with what we had done. On October 18th, we're getting prepared to send out a notification for the volunteers to come down to Lorewa for a luncheon. So that will be circulating around to the city and some of the other volunteers that have participated with us to make that event successful for us in regards to that. But also, we're really gratified there's not enough words that we can say for what had transpired on that. And unfortunately, we had some losses during the time just as well. So that made some of the other challenges within our community through the whole processes of that. So we're grateful for a lot of that. And then I received word over the weekend that we were nominated by the Washington Disabilities and Events Association in Bellevue for the events that we did on the canoe journey itself. So that's something that we just heard a few days ago through that process. But really thank the council and everybody that's been involved with that, the partnerships that we have, and we're continuing to build through those aspects of it. But it's a long process that we still have some matters that we have to take care of. And I'll be talking to you later about that, you and Nathan, on those parts of it. But it's something that we really raise our hands up to. And with that, we have a gift for the council.
Well, that's really cool.
And it's something that you're going to have to work out among yourself.
Yeah.
Through that process just as much. Really, it was our youth on the canoe journey, the events that have taken place. We had our youth out there in front. It wasn't us. Many of you may have seen it was our youth that took the leadership and the roles and the responsibilities of getting up there and doing the introductions and talking in our language and awakening with all of the guests that were in our territories there. So we really raised our hands up to them because they really, really shined. And that was something that our elders and our communities and other communities were really proud of, is seeing our youth up there, not us. We were just behind the scenes guiding them through that process. Hodgson.
Thank you so much. This is beautiful. And really, I can step here. We're so appreciative of your partnership and for sharing this land with us. So thank you. We'll find a good place for this. Yes. Yes. You stay for the picture too. Thank you for coming, and thank you.
I have to kind of exit out of here because I have a dinner meeting with one of our kids that is going to go back to college here. So I want to make sure I spend a little time with him before he leaves again. That's it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you again, and we'll find a good spot for that to be. Sorry, now I'm in. Now I'm in the sun. All right, I'm okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, that was really really special. Okay. We have to move on. So I'm going to ask if there are any late items from staff or any late items, and I'll start with staff.
So Mayor and Council, I have two adjustments to speak to during late items. First, I do want to share that we are going to pull from the agenda item E5. And in addition to that, we do have an item to add to the agenda this evening. And that item is regarding the King County versus Turner lawsuit. And we would suggest that be added to other considerations.
Okay, I will add that as I6, and I will scratch E5. Anything from council? Okay, I don't hear anything from council. So that means we will go on to public comment. I didn't have anyone sign up tonight, but there are a couple of folks in the room that I will be surprised if we don't hear from them. If you are joining virtually, now is the time to raise your virtual hand. If you're in the WebEx, if you're calling in, then you will, if you're in the WebEx, you're going to use the raise hand feature. And if you're calling in, *3. And we'll go ahead. If there's anyone in council chambers, we'll start there. Nobody. I don't have any hands online, but we'll pause just a minute because I just gave directions. Okay. Then there is a second public comment period at the end of the meeting for items not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone's inspired during the meeting, we will have another opportunity. That will bring us to the consent agenda. And I'm wondering if there's anything anyone would like to pull or add. Do it in one. Neither. Okay. All right. Then I will read the consent agenda. All right. The City Council minutes of September 2nd, 2025. Expenditure report from September 13th, 2025 to September 26th, 2025 in the amount of $1,949,114.38. First Front Paving Professional Services Agreement, that's TR0122 Professional Services Agreement, PSA 2025-46. Clean Energy Implementation Plan Consultant Budget Transfer and Agreement. That's all. So any comments, questions, or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Anyone opposed to the motion approving the consent agenda, please state your opposition. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Well, I was going to move Adam up, but that went pretty fast. So our next agenda item is a presentation from our 24th Legislative District State Representative, Adam Birnbaum, who's joining us virtually. Good to see you, Representative. And I will go ahead and give you the floor. But you have to unmute yourself. Sorry. Uh-oh. We might, IT, if you're able.
I'm unmuted. There we go. Okay. Thank you to whoever swooped in and unmuted me. I appreciate it. So thank you all for hosting me for a little bit this afternoon. It's good to see everyone. I got a chance to check the Mariners score. We were up 5-1 at the top of the 7th. So I wish I could be there in person with you. I'm in Walla Walla on a joint transportation committee meeting, but getting to talk to you all and seeing the Mariners hopefully going up 2-1, not trying to jinx it here, is a nice substitute. I'm going to really briefly run through 4 things for the upcoming session. And 3 of them are kind of made irrelevant by the 4th one. So bear with me. The first is the high level legislative themes that I expect we're going to be addressing during this upcoming session. This is a little bit of speculation, and what I'm conveying to you is my sense, having conversations with other Democratic and Republican members in the House and Senate. Oftentimes, legislative sessions have themes. I think that insofar as this has a policy theme, it will be around AI, in particular, enacting legislation or considering legislation around the use of people's images or modified versions of people's images, around the consideration of how AI is going to impact the security of our elections. I think there's a huge amount of regulation that is eventually going to be implemented in this space. And I think that there's a ton of appetite among legislators to take a crack at it. I really could not say what exact form that's going to take, other than that I think that something is going to be done around election security in particular. I've heard a variety of proposals, and it's a new enough issue area that I wish I had more to say about that. Another pretty tough one is going to be the Keeping Families Together Act. So we passed a policy that made it harder to effect separations in Washington state several years ago. Since that time, we've seen a significant increase in fentanyl-related deaths statewide, full stop, for everybody. And we have also seen, in particular among very young children, an increase in fentanyl-related deaths that when we go through the analysis are viewed as avoidable. So this act, which raised the safety standard for effecting one of those separations, I think is going to be revisited. This is going to be a very politically challenging discussion, but from the most recent data that we saw from DCYF, I think that there's kind of an emerging consensus that something needs to be done. So that's another policy area to watch. 2 more that I'm not sure whether we'll take action on, but I'm sure are going to be considered quite a bit. One has to do with local revenue support. Cities and counties both are facing significant shortfalls, in particular with changes to the need for appropriation around public defense. And this is an issue that I don't think local jurisdictions can solve on their own, and I think that there's a growing recognition around the state that that's the case. How we solve that is kind of an open question. That is something that's going to come up. I've been convening a property tax work group with a handful of other members. And one thing I can say from the initial meeting that we've had is that there is a ton of interest in trying to raise the lid. That discussion is going to continue. I'm skeptical that we'll take action on that in an election year, just to be candid. I think that anything around revenue or taxation in an election year is unlikely to pass, but you never know. And it's something that a lot of people want to work on. And finally, transportation maintenance and preservation funding. We have to do something there. I don't believe we have any of it in the current version of the budget. So given the state of our transportation budget, it's going to be pretty challenging. So, okay, that was one. And these are some legislative themes that I think we might see coming. So I have 2 more irrelevant ones before we get to the real meat. The budget, as you all know, we balance our budget in Washington state. That's a good thing that we do. In 2012, we passed a law that required us to balance our budget over 4 years. And as we get closer to session, people start to check on 2 things. One is a caseload forecast, and another is an economic revenue forecast. And the first tells us what kind of increases in state obligations we might see. And the second tells us what kind of changes to the revenue situation we might see coming as we approach the session. So in the most recent two economic revenue forecasts, after you get rid of the policy level changes, so we passed some taxes that increased revenue, set that aside, and just look at the non-booked changes to our revenue. We had a $1.2 billion hit in June and a $900 million hit in September. We had about $1.2 billion projected cash to be left at the end of that 4-year outlook period. So we're looking at a shortfall yet to be addressed of around $900 million from where we ended the last session. So this is money that would need to be made up somewhere. But see again my caveats that we will get to the real star of the show in a sec. So I'm going to talk very, very briefly about my priorities, and then I'm going to talk about what the session is largely going to be about. I personally have been talking to constituents across the district over the last session, and a lot of what I'm going to be working on is issues that are specific to the 24th LD that are trying to either address challenges to economic growth or development, or specific problems that constituents are having for a short session. I think that's the type of legislation that's appropriate to work on. So there's some permit appeal reform that I have a work group that is convening some members of the conservation community as well as some members of the business community to try and speed the path of legislation of cases through the Pollution Controls Hearing Board. Working on a couple bills that have to do with transportation funding for small municipalities and smaller counties, the Federal Fund Exchange Program. I'm not sure whether that's going to produce legislation yet. I have a Lammard reform bill that I'm working on with Andrew Engel, a Republican from Eastern Washington, again, trying to improve the ability for us to develop middle housing in Lammards, which are limited areas of more intensive rural development, which we have a few on the peninsula. And then relief for manufactured home park residents who are still experiencing struggles, and some changes to policy that have come through. At least some manufactured home parks are making it very challenging for existing residents to sell their homes because of the requirements around income. So those are a few new pieces of legislation that I'm working on, and that I hope to have legislation to introduce depending on how some negotiations go. And if not, I'm going to pick them back up in the next session. So, okay, what is this session going to be about? It's going to be about the state response to federal changes in Medicaid. This is a massive challenge that we've got to face. Kaiser Family Foundation estimates a $4 billion annual hit to Washington State. On a biennial basis, that's the equivalent of 10% of Washington State's budget. This is thinking mostly about the first order and most immediate effects. It is not considering some of the second order effects that are going to come from these policy changes. The top line estimates from OFM, we could see a 35 to 50% reduction in enrollment on Medicaid. We could see premium increases of up to 15%. The ripple effects include around $100 million increased estimate in uncompensated care. And at least for some parts of our response, for example, the workforce requirement component to federal Medicaid policy, we have to pass a budget to implement our response by sometime in March. We aren't going to get the definitions for how a lot of this stuff gets rolled out until June 2026. This is something that around the nation, states are trying to figure out. Nobody has the right solution yet. And the size of the financial obligation is so significant that it trying to keep us whole is going to be a massive challenge. And as I talk about this issue, as I learn more about it, the way I'm talking about it is changing. Initially, I said we're going to do everything we can to backfill, and I think a more honest answer now is we're going to do everything we can to backfill, but we won't be able to backfill everything. And that's going to mean having some very hard conversations about which services are going to be cut, who we're going to allow to see increases in premiums, and how we can mitigate the fallout. So that will be what this session is about. And the size of the financial impact to the state from those changes will dwarf any other appropriation consideration and any other policy consideration that we're having. Or that's my guess. So that's my presentation. Those are the four things, and also the one thing that this upcoming legislative session is going to be about. And I'd love to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions from council? No hard questions. Guess you're skating tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to formulate a question because we understand exactly what you're saying about the one that's going to take the most. And certainly as a council are concerned about that for our residents and also for what it means, what all of that means for our hospital and healthcare provision for people in our community. So thank you for working on that. Let us know how we can be supportive, helpful, what kind of advocacy would be useful, any of those things where we can be partners in this, because obviously it's going to be a big impact on our community.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all the work that you all are doing. I know that the city of Port Angeles is facing many of the same pressures and challenges that other governments are right now. It's a time of uncertainty. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the partnership that I have with all of you. I genuinely enjoy being able to pick up the phone and call you and ask questions. And I think that the city of Port Angeles is often mentioned as a leader in solving some of the most challenging issues that the state faces, in particular around housing and land use. That's something that not just when people are talking to me or to Mike or to Steve, I've heard folks say, and and I'm really grateful to get to work with you all during this time. So thank you. I don't have the score up right in front of me, so I was going to do something cute and see if we've gotten another run. It seemed to be a good day for us, but I will. I'll sign off.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking time out of your day. It sounds like you're pretty busy, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a good night. All right. Well, we have a number of presentations this evening, which is always fun. And I forgot to ask you, Navarra, but next we have Karen Affeld up from the North Olympic Development Council. And Navarra, I wondered if you would be interested in just quickly introducing Karen, since you are our representative on that body.
I'm happy to introduce Karen. I have been the representative on the NODC board since I joined council almost fully 6 years ago. And I feel like if you're interested in economic development, really North Olympic Development Council is the way to get involved, because it's a truly regional approach, working with really a diversity of community members and agencies, tribes, businesses. A couple of months ago, we got a presentation from the logging cooperative. And I think really looking at from a holistic perspective, really the different kinds of sectors in our community, some of them more historic, like logging and the marine trades, and then some, newer ones, including, like lumber traders and all the work that Danny Steiger is doing. So anyhow, just sort of a boot camp version for what NODC does, though I'm sure that Karen is going to introduce that more fully. And Karen is our fearless leader of that agency. and has been doing this work and I think really collaborating with local governments for quite a long time. And Karen, I'm hopeful that you'll talk in addition to the SEDS a little bit about the energy conference that I'm very excited that our city continues to participate in. I hope that was a decent introduction.
Thank you.
Sorry, Karen.
No, thank you, Navarra, and thank you to council and staff for inviting me to be here this evening. Yeah, I am primarily here to talk about the every 5 years, NODC has the job of producing a comprehensive economic development strategy for the region, which in our case, the region is Clallam and Jefferson counties. And so we are wrapping up that process now, and I'll talk a little bit about what that process looked like. And we have a draft posted for public comment. So let's go with the first slide, or the next slide, I guess. So NODC, the North Olympic Development Council, we are the regional economic development district for Clallam and Jefferson counties. And what the heck is an economic development district, and what does that mean? The regional economic development districts are a federal entity, unlike the economic development corporations or EDCs, which are a state and single county entity. The Federal Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration works with localities to designate these economic development districts. They're always multi-county. Ours is fairly small, being just the 2 counties. And the role of an economic development district, each one looks different. But in our case, we take a really broad approach to defining economic development and working on economic development. So, our approach seeks to build a thriving economy, but we believe that you can't really do that if you're not also thinking about a healthy environment and as the foundation of all of that, having a resilient community. And so our work is quite broad, and some of it is not what you might think of as traditional economic development, because we really see these pieces as very much interrelated, especially in a rural area like ours. So we take that broad approach. The thing we are primarily tasked with is higher level regional planning, really trying to build regional collaborations and do regional planning. So that includes this comprehensive economic development strategy, but we also in recent years have worked quite a bit on climate and disaster resilience, again, from that regional perspective. And we also are doing quite a bit of work in the energy space. We support economic development in key sectors, and those are sectors that are usually drawn out in this comprehensive economic development strategy. So some of the areas that we work in are farm and food. We live on a peninsula, and so having the ability to raise at least some of our own food here is pretty critical. We also, along with many others, work in the forestry space, marine trades, and green technology, or what we're now calling the innovation sector. We support development of what I call an economic infrastructure for the region. So that's things like working on broadband expansion, really thinking about energy reliability and resilience, workforce development, all of those things that are the building blocks of our economy. And I think one of our most important roles is as a regional convener. So really trying to have those regional conversations. We are the administrative home of the Strait Ecosystem Recovery Network, which is the kind of local strait arm of the Puget Sound Partnership. We do an annual conference on energy reliability and resilience and environmental resilience, and that is coming up October 21st and 22nd. And thanks to the city for your ongoing support of that event. And we also work a lot on collaborative funding proposals, including like the recompete proposal, which we were one of the partners in. Next slide. So what is a SEDS? What is a comprehensive economic development strategy? The comprehensive economic development strategy is something that is required of us by the Economic Development Administration. It's intended to be a place-based, regionally driven economic development planning process. And unlike some other kinds of processes like the comprehensive plans, it primarily is a plan for planners, for stakeholders, for rights holders. So it isn't something where we take, a couple of years and really do an awful lot of public outreach on it, although I'm happy to be here this evening talking about it. It's a process where we ask those stakeholders, those local governments, tribes, to represent their own constituents. And to work together on what this plan looks like. We engage with community leaders, we leverage the involvement of the private sector and establish a strategic blueprint for regional collaboration around economic development. So that is the SEDS in a nutshell. Next slide. And what is it used for? Well, we hope that it's not a plan that sits on the shelf. We hope that it is a means to have a regional conversation and see ways in which all of the plans can reflect each other. So, our starting point with developing the SEDS is always to see what do our member governments, what do the tribes, what do the ports, what do other organizations have in their plans, and to draw from those in developing our plan. But the fundamental way that this gets used is as a tool for seeking federal funding, particularly from the Economic Development Administration, but USDA also will look to a SEDS. So if an entity is looking to apply for federal funding from the Economic Development Administration, and that's like this recompete grant that our region has gotten $35.6 million. One of the things that we had to have for that was that there had to be a letter from NODC that said that, yes, this recompete grant is in alignment with the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. When the port goes after funding from EDA, same thing, I provide a letter to them that says that, that this project that they're undertaking is in alignment with the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And so one of the goals in developing this is to make sure that one, we've gotten input from everybody who might want to be seeking funding, and two, that the goals and the strategies we put in there are broad enough that I can find a page, because I give page numbers. This is where you can find it. So I want it to be broad enough that I can say, oh yes, this is in the plan, and here's where you can find it. So some things to keep in mind. And as I said, I think that one of the things that can be useful is this can really help build collaboration across different jurisdictions and sectors. And it also guides the work of the NODC. We can't do everything in the SEDS. It is fundamentally a collaborative document. There are things in there that we're not even allowed to work on. Like, we're not specifically allowed to work on housing development. And yet housing is an important piece to have in that plan. But everything that we do is grounded in the SEDS. All right, next slide. So what does the SEDS have in it? There's a summary background section, and that section is where we go over what are the most important economic factors in the region right now. What has happened recently? What are the demographics? What demographic changes have happened in the last 5 years? What does the economy look like from a statistical perspective? And so we do some analysis around that. There's a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And our approach to that is survey-driven. So we send a survey out to a broad group of partners who send it out to their partners. And we ended up with, I think, about 210 survey responses this time out, which is, I think, about 4 times as many as we had when we did the last SEDS. So that's a good sign. And so we use that to see, what do stakeholders, rights holders, and residents see as the strengths and the weaknesses and the challenges to the economy in our area, and use that as a framework. We have to have an evaluation framework. How are we going to know if we're successful? And then something that is not in those basic 4 pieces, but that we are asked to address, is we have to address what they call economic resilience. And so that is, what are the things that we're going to be doing over the next 5 years to make sure or to move towards a situation where the economy in our area can better withstand if a plant closes, if there's a national recession, if, God forbid, there's another COVID. or there's a major, there's an earthquake or a tsunami or a major weather disaster. And so we have to address, what are some of the things that we think would be helpful in that situation. All right, next slide. So the planning process that we used, we did that stakeholder survey over the summer. We did some interviews and focus groups beyond that. So if we saw folks that we hadn't heard from, we reached out to say, hey, what do you think about this? We did in-person and virtual stakeholder and rights holder meetings, a number of those. And then we started drafting the sets. And so we finished a draft September the 26th, and it is now up for public review and public comment. And in teeny tiny print on there, and I know these slides will be available, there is the link on our website to where you can find the draft plan, and there's a form there that you can use to submit comment. And it's basically, our website is noprcd.org, and if you look under projects, under planning, you'll find comprehensive economic development strategy, and that's where you go. So we will be taking comment, until until October the 25th, and then we will have 5 days to incorporate all of that and get the final draft to the Economic Development Administration. The final step is that EDA has to review and accept the document. Generally speaking, that happens, under the current circumstances with the new administration. There's always some potential that they will come back and ask us to change language or something. We don't know, but that's what the process looks like. I'm going to run through the rest of the slides really fast, really high level, because there's a lot there, and I know you won't have time for it. So we've divided the goals, actions, and strategies into 4 broad goals. One is a diversified, resilient economy. One is opportunity and prosperity for all. One is strengthened and sustainable infrastructure. And the last is protected and enhanced cultural and natural assets. We think that most of the things that we would want to address as a region fall into those 4 broad goals. And so I'm going to go through each of those goals and kind of what the strategies and actions are under there. You're going to see really small print. So under a diversified, resilient economy, one of the strategy areas is the region's blue economy. So that is our marine trades and maritime work primarily. Also would include fisheries, anything that happens in the water. And so there are a number of strategies there. I think one of the most important there is to proactively support regional economic development initiatives that expand the local marine trade and maritime employment base, invest in maintaining, upgrading, and expanding port infrastructure to support those industries, increase resilience of ports and working waterfronts to earthquakes, tsunamis, king tides, and increase the availability of technical assistance and access to capital for businesses in the sector, and provide workforce training. So next slide. Also in this goal is agriculture and food systems. And so everything here is around how do we maintain an active, thriving farm and food sector so that we can help to feed ourselves. And how do we do that in a way that is supportive of a healthy environment and healthy people? And so you'll see there are a number of things there around availability of technical assistance, access to capital and services to support businesses in that sector, and developing a resilient regional food system. Affordability of farmland is really critical right now. And so there are a number of steps around that. Support efforts to improve tribal food sovereignty and access to first foods, advocate for and work towards sustainable funding for programs that assist low-income and elderly residents to get food, and elevate the peninsula as a leading agritourism destination. Next, forestry. A bunch of strategies here: protect privately owned working forest lands, improve health and wildfire resistance of forests, encourage innovative forestry approaches that expand economic opportunities, incentivize approaches that align with conservation and build resilience, support and invest in innovative product development and value-added processing, promote research and development of necessary infrastructure to support value adding and sustainability, such as additional kilns, equipment for biomass utilization and thermal modification, promote understanding of the benefits of the forestry sector, and develop infrastructure and systems to connect forestry to maritime transportation to reduce having to have all those log trucks on the roads all the time. Next. The innovation economy or green economy, invest in piloting and scaling sustainable infrastructure, such as local renewable energy generation options, EV infrastructure, and work with the Pacific Northwest National Lab, which we are so fortunate to have in SQUEM and other regional partners. Support, expand, and incentivize sustainable industry efforts and opportunities, and provide education in high schools and workforce training to new and existing workers in the sector so that we have the workforce that we need to work in those businesses. Tourism. Bunch of strategies around tourism. I'm not going to try to read all of them, but it's really about supporting regional public-private collaboration and investing in recreation and ecotourism and cultural tourism opportunities, supporting the kinds of events and festivals that we have, supporting development of EV infrastructure, and also finding ways to support and prioritize culturally appropriate visitor experiences driven by our tribes or the tribes in the region, as to have the kind of tourism that they want to see and that they can benefit from. Next. Business growth and expansion strategies. Again, a whole range of things here, from making sure we have technical assistance available and access to capital, training, increasing local investment availability for businesses, encouraging alternative business ownership models like cooperatives and ESOPs, so like lumber traders, which is an ESOP. And the Recompete program, making sure that we're aligned with that and are helping to support businesses in alignment with that project. Promoting buy local campaigns and investigating shared services for small businesses that may not be able to afford to have their own accountant or their own attorney, but might want access to shared HR services or accounting services, that sort of thing. Next. Workforce and education. A lot of this aligns with the Recompete plan, which has a lot to say about workforce. But supporting area tribes and strengthening tribal employment rights ordinance programs and policies and workforce training. Strengthening and expanding career-connected learning opportunities in our school systems. Demand-driven skill attainment through Peninsula College and Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building, supporting helping individuals in rural and remote communities to have access to training and supports, and also making sure that the services are available, the barrier removal programs are available to help people actually be able to get into training. Do they have childcare available? Do they have transportation available? What do they need in order to be able to access training and then get into jobs? All right. Microenterprise development. So there's a lot of emphasis on how we attract larger businesses, larger employers to our area and how we support those. But the peninsula is largely a very small business-driven economy. Most of our businesses have 5 or fewer employees and qualify as what's known as a microenterprise. And the businesses that are that small need different kinds of supports than much larger businesses. And so making sure that they can get the coaching and the mentoring that they need, that there are shared spaces and services available, making sure that, that there are investment vehicles and flexible financing available to businesses of that size, and really encouraging the establishment of things like maker spaces, small business incubators, shared use commercial kitchens, spaces where you don't have to rent the whole place yourself, but you have access to what you need. Next slide. Childcare is a huge problem. I don't think I probably have to tell anybody here that. You know, you can't get a job, you can't run a business if you don't have access to affordable childcare that is appropriate for your family and near where you live or near where you work. And so we want to provide support for development of new childcare centers, but also a variety of childcare businesses and microenterprise childcare to increase the number of childcare slots, and particularly for children under 5, because that is the biggest problem for us. Providing childcare for children under 5 is much more expensive than for older children, making it often unaffordable for families and for childcare providers, and also, those are the most critical years. You know, that's where we really see a drop off in workforce participation, is where families have children under 5. We also want to develop and pilot innovative methods to attract, train, and retain the childcare workforce. You know, one of the challenges that we have in our area and in our state is that the requirements to be a childcare worker are very similar to those to work in the K through 12 schools. And yet one of those pays a lot more than the other. And that is a challenge, figuring out how we're going to afford to pay those workers enough to retain them. So what are other more creative things we can work on that will help us to attract and retain that workforce besides increasing their wage, while we work on ways to get those wages up? And then also explore and disseminate options for employer-based childcare and ways that employers can help support the childcare system, because employers really have a vested interest in there being childcare available for their workers. Next slide. Housing. Again, a bunch of strategies here. Housing is just so critical. You know, because this is a regional document, one approach is to start to align counties, cities, and public-private partnerships around strategies for affordable and workforce housing, and explore a variety of solutions that use zoning, regulations, taxes, developer incentives, and innovative capital financing. So what are the things that we can work on as a region, as opposed to all of us working individually within our communities? Build the capacity and the support that's needed for the nonprofit sector to engage in housing development using the full range of state and federal and private funding and innovative development models. Support development of multi-household dwellings and other housing affordable to the general workforce that are in areas that are close to shopping, employment services, education and training, and public transport. And build the capacity of families through education strategies on home buying and budgeting to help families have the tools to successfully stay in their home and build family wealth by owning their own homes. So there's a bunch there, and there's probably a lot more that could be done, but we were focusing on what we can do as a region. Next slide. Healthcare, again, several strategies working with area hospitals and tribal health clinics to ensure availability of and access to quality healthcare, including primary care, specialty care, urgent and emergency services. Looking at the workforce needs of the healthcare system, and supporting good mental health and resilience through supportive services and promotion of social connections. Next slide. Strengthened and sustainable infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater. Again, a lot that can be done there. And I know I'm short on time, so I'm going to stop reading some of these out and just let you take a quick look. And the next slide. Broadband. Broadband is really important to the area, and we're just looking at pursuing broadband solutions that fit our rural, remote, and mountainous needs, and supporting efforts to provide that access by encouraging internet service providers to participate in affordability programs and supporting digital literacy so that people know how to use that internet where it's available to them. Next slide. Transportation, lots and lots there. Maintenance and improvement of highway and road systems for greater resilience. Improving and expanding public transit options. Development of clean energy and electric vehicle infrastructure, and a number more there. Next slide. Energy. Really trying to make sure that our rural and remote communities have reliable, resilient energy available to them. And that's what most of this is about. Next slide. Protected and enhanced cultural and natural assets. We're really looking here at the natural environment at conservation. So that's preserving working agricultural and forest lands from conversion to other uses, creating educational opportunities and internships, training in restoration, conservation, and traditional stewardship practices, exploring and supporting incentives for resilient management of working forests, and again, a whole range of other things to help us conserve the forest lands and agricultural lands that we have. Next slide. And then outdoor recreation. This is one of the things that we have as a real strength in our area is a lot of outdoor recreation opportunities. How do we capitalize on that? How do we help that drive better paying jobs? And so that's what the strategies here are all about. And next slide. Placemaking. Placemaking is about how do we create places that we all want to live in and where we feel like we can thrive. And so there are a number of strategies here around arts and culture, around making sure that everyone feels welcome, and supporting downtown districts, cultural districts, heritage areas, Main Street organizations, and collaboration between tribal communities and local governments and other organizations to protect and improve natural and cultural resources of and for the tribes. And I think that's about it. So again, apologies for perhaps running long, but we want your input on all of these things. And the SEDS has a lot more to it. It's a lengthy document. I hope that you all will take a look and really look forward to receiving feedback. And again, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm open to questions if there's time and if anybody has any.
Are there questions from council? Okay, not at this time.
Excuse me.
Yes, wait, go ahead.
Thanks. What have you found are the best ways to make these goals actionable and not just something that sits on the shelf?
So most of the things that are in there are, some are aspirational, but one of the things that we really talked about is trying to make sure that most of what is in there are things that people feel like can at least incremental progress can be made on them in the next 5 years. And so there was a lot of discussion about that. And I do feel like most of what's in there are things where we have seen progress in the last 5 years and where we can make progress in the next 5 years. We aren't going to solve any of them probably, in the next 5 years. But I do feel like most of what's in there is actionable. There are people working on it. And I guess my other maybe somewhat Pollyanna-ish answer to that is that collaboration is just critically important. The more that we can all find the ways to work together, everybody working on their piece of it, but moving forward together, then the better our chances are of making progress happen. And by all of us working together, I mean all of us. That means residents, that means local government, nonprofit organizations, tribes, everybody finding their piece of this plan and of their own plans that they want to work on and really working together to make it happen. And again, maybe Pollyanna-ish, especially in the times that we live in, but I believe it.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Okay, well, we have your presentation and we know where to find the report, and I appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us and look forward to hearing more as you progress.
Yeah, well, thank you again for inviting me and also for the work that you all did on it and your support.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I think we should do the last presentation because we have someone else waiting, and then we'll take a break. Chief Smith, I was hoping you would introduce our guest, Justine Corley, for us. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mayor. So our colleague Justine with Clallam County Sheriff's Department has a great presentation, and in a previous life, she and I both worked together for the same agency, but never actually worked together. But I'm familiar with what she did for Shenandoah and National Park Service, and I think we're really lucky to have her here in Clallam County.
Thank you. So I was invited here today to give an update on the alert system, which is a shared system between the county and the city of Port Angeles. But before I talk about our specific alert system, I think I need to talk about other alert systems just to put it into context. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So the basic alert systems that are out there, we have our wireless emergency alerts. So, a show of hands, who gets Amber Alerts here in the room? Okay, you're getting those through the wireless emergency alerts. And those are generally sent by various agencies, but it can be the state. Washington State can send them out. Washington State Police can send them out. And we actually have the ability to send them out, although we're a little more restricted. The next one is the emergency alert system. How many of you remember or still, watch regular network television where, those alert tones come on, stand by for an emergency alert. I think I was maybe in my 30s before I actually got a real one, not just a test. And so those are sent out via usually the National Weather Service, but we also have the ability to touch that system. And then we have our local emergency alerts, which we use the Everbridge platform. We switched to this platform, I would say it's been almost 2 years. So if you could please show the next slide. So to talk a little bit about wireless emergency alerts, they can be sent to any cell phone in an area. You can draw what they call a geofence on a map, and it'll ping. There is some slop over outside of that boundary, but in essence, it'll ping every single cell phone if they have alerts activated on their phone, which the user has some control over. But it's a way that we can reach our visitor population. So there is that ability through WIA. The next is they can send text, email, or voice. But what they can't do is send messages to landlines. And we still have a lot of landlines in the county. It's really hard to get an exact count, but given our demographic, there are a lot of landlines here. And it cannot send if self-service is out. Then you're kind of dead in the water, so to speak. Go ahead with the next slide. The emergency alert system, it sends messages via, here it's radio stations. We don't have any local TV stations. It is used when other types of communications are down. So we could lose our cell coverage, but I can still push, the Weather Service can still push a message out to radios, and I can still push a message out to our local radio stations. One of the disadvantages, though, is not many people listen to local radio anymore. what we tell people in emergency preparedness, because, the communications piece is always the most important piece. It's the one people are worried about. And I always tell them, jump in your car and listen to your car radio. That's being threatened now with newer cars. They're threatening not to put AM radios in those cars. The emergency management population is fighting that because it's really kind of a last ditch effort to get the word out is the car radio, or if you're lucky enough to have an emergency radio. Go to the next slide. So the local emergency alert system, again, we use the Everbridge platform. It's shared with the county and city. So the city can, within the city boundaries and with their water users, who some of which aren't technically in the city can send direct messages. It's compatible with all kinds of phones, including landlines. So we can push messages out to landlines. The importance of this is it's not, as you see in the disadvantages, it's not necessarily the first notification received, because I personally received that tsunami notification the same time that all of you do, if you have the alerts activated. But I'm going to be sending out information that's relevant to our local area. So I'm going to be sending out, where are the shelters? What evacuation routes should you use? What routes are closed? Where can you get food? Where you can get water? Those are the kind of local messaging that we can do via this system. And again, we can send it via text, email, or voice. So we have, there's even we can connect it to social media as well. So we can push out messages through social media. But again, it's not necessarily the first notification received, and it requires citizens to opt in to ensure that they're actually receiving the information. We have, if you look down on the bottom of the slide, just under 4,000 citizens have opted in. We go to, every event, fair. We were just out at a safety fair in Squim. We hand out cards. We really encourage people to opt in. We can reach more people than that 4,000. But the thing is if they opt in, we know they want to get the message, and we know their information's correct. The system did import in, so we have about 90,000 contacts in the system right now. It imported in all of the people that were in the system when we had this platform prior. Plus, it does do a little data mining. But we're finding some of that information's not accurate. So we really, really want people to opt in to make sure their information's the most accurate. Go ahead to the next slide. And again, what we really want to encourage people to do is keep receiving your notifications on your phone and sign up for our system, because there's a failure rate to any of these systems. We is dependent on cell coverage. So we want you to be able to it's really important that you get the message. And so we want you to be able to sign up for various ways of receiving this message. For the people in the audience, I do have some sign-up cards out on the table there. So on your way out, please help yourselves. And then I put some on your desks. So again, I just can't, it's being able to receive emergency alerts is really, it's basically can be life-saving. So, we want to get as many people to receive those alerts as possible. Next slide. And kind of related to this, I was also asked to talk about the Shakeout event that's coming up next week. We will be testing Everbridge during that event. And we're going to test to the broader group, not just the opt-ins, the broader group. This is the way we can flush out all the people who don't want to receive the alerts, or the person living in Tennessee that for some reason got our alert. So that way we can clean up the system, but also people who have opted in can receive the message and see that the system's working. So this is going to be, we're going to send the message at about 9:16 a.m. to give everybody the chance to get, because also what we're notifying them of is that the tsunami sirens are going to be tested with the actual whale sound. They're only tested once a year with that sound. And we get a ton of complaints every year. And the complaints are either they can hear it or they can't hear it. So we want to warn as many people as possible. So around 9:16, that message will go out. At about 10:16 is when the tsunami sirens are going to be tested. We also encourage everyone to participate in the earthquake drill, which means, drop, cover, hold on, and, check your phone and make sure you get your alerts. With that, go ahead to the next slide. I also have for the people online, I have QR codes where you can either register for Shakeout or sign up for Everbridge. And with that, are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Drew, go ahead.
I don't specifically have a question. I'm just doing a plug on your behalf. So my number is one of the ones that was ported over from the last system, and I encourage everyone to do it. I also set it up so it goes to my store phone, so my employees will have it. And we have a lot more younger people in the crowd tonight than usual. When your parents aren't paying attention, feel free to register them on their landline also, because I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably 75% of the people here's parents have landlines. But no, this is a very handy thing. The only downside is when there's an alert, I get like 4 notifications from all my devices.
Yeah, and the system is supposed to, when you answer one device, it's supposed to start sending. But if you don't answer one, it'll really quickly hit all your devices. But as a person who opts in, you can control that. So thank you for that. Any other questions?
Are there any other questions from council? All right. Well, I have the app and it is very easy to navigate. And I will just give an example of how it can be helpful. So I work at the college. We also use Everbridge. And for students, you're automatically enrolled. For staff, it's an opt-in. And I missed that memo when I very first started. So I hadn't opted in, and I got to work and found out that there'd been a cougar sighting right behind our building. And I was like, wow, that would have been nice to know. And that's when I learned that I wasn't opted in. So I quickly opted in, and now I get all the alerts. As we learned at our previous meeting, probably the cougar wasn't interested in us. Curious, but not interested. So all's well that ends well. But it was an interesting way to find out that, I wasn't opted in. So it's, I would encourage everyone to do it as well. So thank you for bringing the materials. And I suspect if people somehow missed all of that, if they go to the Clallam County website, they can navigate pretty easily to get themselves signed up.
Right. They can go to either the sheriff's page or the emergency management page. Also, my contact information is on the emergency management page. So you can call me if you're having trouble signing up. I can help you sign up.
Great. All right. Maybe a trip to the senior center sometime to help get people signed up. Just thinking about where people congregate. So excellent. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming. All right. We will take a 5-minute break and come back for another presentation about the comprehensive plan. All right. 5-minute break. right, we need to go ahead and get started again. We have some more items on our agenda this evening. All right, we're ready to go. Okay. We are gonna have the door open for a little bit because it's very warm in here. And so in case anyone is wondering if it was just you, it's not. So if it's loud or disruptive, we'll come up with a different plan. But for now, we're gonna have that open. We will go ahead and get started with our next item, which is an additional update on the comprehensive plan. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Calvin Goings.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight's presentation is on the periodic update to the comprehensive plan, also known as the Vision 2045 plan. Hard copies of this presentation and an accompanying memo are at the council dais, and there are hard copies of the memo on the staff table if folks are interested in following along. This will be a much shorter presentation than the others you've seen tonight. Not really, but it's quite a bit longer. But I do hope that you might consider holding some of your questions early on because they are likely answered on some of the other slides that are later on. So this draft comprehensive plan reflects the community we serve and the hundreds of comments and recommendations that we've heard from local residents. For 18 months, staff have engaged with the public to ensure our community's long-range growth and development plan is shaped by its citizens. Numerous workshops, open houses, surveys, listening posts, events, presentations, and stakeholder advisory committee sessions have been held. During your September 23rd work session and in subsequent emails, members of the council raised questions, requested more information, and made suggestions. In total, the council submitted over 120 comments to the draft plan. Thank you. Staff have consolidated those 120 comments into 43 distinct issues. So at 1 minute each, you can do the math of how long this presentation might take. I'm going to go as fast as possible. We have grouped those issues into general items, plan elements, the housing action plan, the UGA swap, proposed rezone, and EIS alternatives. Before I go any further, it might be helpful to better understand how the comprehensive plan fits into all of the other important documents the council reviews and approves over time. The comp plan is the foundational document with the other plans built off of its work. Specifically around rezones and land use items, the comp plan sets the broad outlines that drives later amendments to the municipal code for the actual regulations to implement the broad outlines of the comprehensive plan. So let's start with the 5 issues you raised under general items. Issue 1, tribal participation in the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and input on the zoning of tribally owned parcels. Representatives of the tribe were invited to all of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meetings. To re-emphasize the city's support for tribal involvement, in February,
I'm sorry for interrupting, but which representatives from the tribe were invited to all Stakeholder Advisory meetings, please?
The Tribal Executive Director was added to the list in February, and earlier than that, I believe it was the development representative of the tribe. It was who they recommended.
Who recommended them?
Tribal leadership. I don't have the email in front of me, but I'm happy to follow up. So again, to reemphasize the city's support in February and in March, city staff re-corresponded with the executive director regarding upcoming stakeholder advisory committees. Staff provided to the executive director detailed background information on the comprehensive plan update. They were included on future stakeholder advisory committees agendas and received the informational emails. The recommendation, staff has reached out and offered one-on-one meeting tribal opportunities with tribal leadership to discuss the draft comprehensive plan and input on the proposed zoning of tribally owned properties. Issue 2, ensure an equity lens guides proposed rezones, city investments, and neighborhood changes. Numerous goals, policies, and documents in the draft consider racial equity. Specifically, Capital Facilities Goal 1 includes a commitment to, quote, ensure equitable access and outcomes for all community members. Policy CF 1.5 requires equity impact assessments for capital facilities planning, and Policy T 3.3 prioritizes underserved neighborhoods in the capital facilities element and plan. And there is analysis of the racially disparate impacts, which provides a detailed examination of socioeconomic data, including factors such as who is most affected by high housing costs and the lack of housing options. So the recommendation is to further strengthen this work. A new item has been added to goal LU2. This enhanced policy ensures that any new community designs, rezoning, design standards, density, and dimensional standards must consider equity in all updates to the code. Issue 3. Ensure facility inventories in the parks, recreation, and open space and capital facilities elements are fully updated. Staff will continue to review the various facility inventories in the draft comprehensive plan and ensure that all entries are accurate and fully updated. Issue 4, policies and regulations in both the implementation section and within the draft comprehensive plan. Policy, the term policy is used in multiple contexts. Per the Growth Management Act and the comprehensive plan must include policies that guide the development of future regulations. So the recommendation is that the element section of the draft plan will be clarified to distinguish between 1, policies which set general direction, and 2, implementing actions or regulations which carry out that direction. This will also ensure consistency and eliminate potential confusion. Issue 5, key performance indicators. As the comprehensive plan is a 20-year policy-driven document that provides a source of reference and guidance for future regulatory and administrative actions, as mentioned earlier at the beginning, implementation occurs through the development of future regulations and budgeting decisions. The recommendation is that we continue to include KPIs in the city's strategic plan and annual work plans. Next, we'll review the 6 issues that were raised by council under the land use element. Issue 6, council has provided direction to staff to enact a form-based code. On August 4th, 2020, council did indeed approve a contract with the Makers architectural firm in part to adopt a form-based code for the city's commercial zones, specifically titles 14 and 17. Form-based code is a land use development regulation that emphasizes physical form rather than a separation of uses as the organizing principle for the code, basically focusing on the form of a structure over the function of a structure. A well-designed car repair shop, for example, could be located in a residential use. In December of 2021, a council memo followed up on earlier council action by indicating that unfortunately few, if any, cities across the U.S. had adopted a purely form-based code that does not address land uses at all, largely because such codes could be inflexible and unable to respond to unique local circumstances. Now, due to these challenges,
let's just clarify. The council memo is not action by the city council. Is that right?
Mayor, would you like me to continue, or do you want to stop for questions?
I think I'm on here. I think this is just listed as an opportunity to further clarify where we went.
I'm asking a simple question. Is a memo by our staff an action by the city council?
It is
yes or no?
No. So
is that an action by the city council? Or is that something written by staff?
I think council member, what I'm attempting.
It's a yes or no question.
Mayor, would you like me to answer to yes or no, or be able to answer the entire question in its entirety?
I would like to hear the answer in its entirety, but and then move on, and we'll come back.
Respectfully, this is a meeting of the city council, and this is our opportunity to discuss. I know our staff want to do a presentation. This is our meeting, and we should be able to discuss during our meeting. So I'm simply asking a yes or no question on the previous bullet. Is that an action by the city council, or is that something written by staff?
Point of order, Mayor. I believe this question was answered.
Yes, the point is well taken. The answer was it is in a memo. So no, it was not council action.
And respectfully, attorney, it's council members who make points of
order. That was Amy.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. All right. Calvin, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And my apologies. We have newer staff members, newer council members who weren't here in 2020, and staff thought it important to provide the full context. Apologize if that's not helpful. Due to these challenges, there were only a handful of jurisdictions in Washington that have adopted truly form-based codes. Of the cities identified in Washington, all have utilized hybrid form-based codes, which continue to retain some emphasis on permitted use standards while layering on new design standards that govern block frontages, parking locations, streetscape standards, etc. These jurisdictions have largely focused their work in their central business districts or downtown commercial areas. The good news is the city did take important steps to implement the council's direction in the form-based codes in 2022 when the council adopted commercial and multifamily block frontage standards and infill design standards. As a result, residential uses are now allowed in all commercial zones. So again, positive steps along this council direction. Now, building on this important work, the comprehensive plan update ensures even more flexibility in land use and supports supports the inclusion of commercial uses in traditionally residential-only zones. This begins with the future land use map, which proposes reducing the number of residential designations and changing them from commercial to mixed use to support even more housing development opportunities. The next step will be in 2026 zoning code review, which will include reducing the overall number of zones and redefining the uses that can intermingle on site or adjacent to one another. So the recommendation is that the update of this periodic update will ensure that future zoning code updates planned for 2026 do incorporate additional form-based regulations and place a greater emphasis on the diversity and how uses interact and complement each other rather than only allowing uses adjacent to one another. Another tool the city could use in 2026's work would be to state residential districts rather than residential zones. Issue 7, too much land along the waterfront has been proposed industrial land use designation. The 2021 Shoreline Master Program, SMP, addresses this issue by establishing shoreline zoning and balancing a working waterfront with public access and restoration. The only high-intensity designation allows water-dependent industrial uses, and it's been limited to the historic industrial core from the Hook to the west to Valley Creek. The rest of the central and eastern waterfront is designated shoreline residential or urban conservancy, which prioritizes access, recreation, and habitat restoration. This balance is reinforced by the Harbor Resources Management Plan's vision of a full spectrum waterfront and the comprehensive plan's re-envisioning of the Rainier Mill site for mixed use. So the recommendation is to ensure transparency and greater understanding. A simplified version of the SMP environmental designations map will be added to the land use appendix, along with a brief explanation of how these designations balance industry with public access and recreation. Issue 8, provide greater clarification on industrial marine land use designation. The draft's industrial designation is broad, while the 2021 SMP provides detailed rules for the waterfront. The industrial marine zone is meant for water-dependent uses along the shoreline, and there are currently no properties actually utilizing this zone. Instead, areas of the shoreline with high-intensity designation are zoned industrial heavy. The HI shoreline designation is reserved for water-focused commercial, transportation, and industrial uses such as shipping terminals and boat manufacturing. The SMP map shows HI is limited to the historic industrial core, concentrating marine activity where infrastructure exists, while reserving other waterfront areas for public access and recreation. So the recommendation is to remove the never utilized industrial marine zone from Title 17 in the 2026 follow-up work. The SMP adequately regulates these water-dependent industrial uses already. And to improve clarity, a short note or text box will be added to the land use element, explaining how the comprehensive plan and SMP work together. This clarification will ensure that within the shoreline jurisdiction, SMP designations and regulations are indeed the primary guide. Issue 9, transitioning from Euclidean zoning to form-based zoning. As stated earlier, the draft plan embraces and formalizes this important shift as council has asked. New land use designations emphasize neighborhood form over abstract density, and Goal LU2 establishes the needed framework for this important transition. The draft EIS even highlights this change more by, quote, saying, moving away from units per acre density to form-based descriptions. And the future land use map section provides the background and detail necessary for the continued implementation of the council's direction around form-based codes. To further clarify the term form-based, the impacted sections of the draft plan will be updated with improved visuals from the Housing Action Plan, such as the permit-ready townhouse model, which illustrates the development types supported by this new approach. Issue 10, the future land use map and current zone map concurrency. The future land use map has been used since the adoption of the first comprehensive plan in 1995. At that time, the map was not property specific. Instead, it used generalized blobs, as they've been referred to, of land use designation that led to differing interpretations, which generally reinforced unfortunate historic development patterns. The purpose of this new map is to guide future growth pattern as supported by a form-based comprehensive plan. The proposed map has been updated to reflect intensity changes in zoning for strategic areas that support this draft approach. The recommendation is to continue with the proposed citywide rezone to support land use policies in the draft plan and pursue future rezones during the annual cycles to ensure the map and the current zoning map remain parallel and consistent. Issue 11, draft documents contain abbreviations and Scrivener's errors. Yep, you caught us. With over 500 pages of documents, there are some differences within the drafts, but we continue to edit and draft the comprehensive plan to remedy any potential inaccuracies, eliminate unnecessary abbreviations, confirm all the dates, and correct scriveners or formatting errors prior to your final adoption. Next are the 4 issues raised within the economic development element. Issue 12. Corner stores should be encouraged in all residential zones. The draft's plan supports small neighborhood businesses by allowing them in all residential zones and encourages locations at neighborhood edges to improve viability. These actions again reflect the plan's value of creating walkable neighborhoods and with local access to goods and services, and again reemphasizes the transition to a form-based code as requested by council. The recommendation, this issue will be further addressed as part of the residential rezones that will come in 2026. And to better demonstrate this proposal, the land use element will include an illustrative graphic that shows how a corner store fits within a residential block. Issue 13, tax increment financing projects should be included in the plan, or TIF. The draft plan does identify TIF as a tool for your consideration. Policy ED 1.15 directs staff to explore TIF as an option for infrastructure, and it might allow the city to proceed with projects without having to tap the general fund. So the recommendation in Policy ED 1.15 can be enhanced, include a specific time frame for council feasibility report and your consideration. Council could also consider this as a 2026 legislative priority, since in Washington State, as you're aware, TIF is highly limited in what it can accomplish compared to other states. Issue 14, support growing the economy. The economic development element should emphasize the importance of collaboration, communication, partnerships with NODC and other organizations as central strategies for advancing our economic vision. Our recommendation is to incorporate a new policy, ED 1.9, to focus on economic development in communications rooted in expanded partnerships and in alignment with plans like SEDS. This policy would encourage the city to foster regular dialogue with community and regional partners, especially around micro and small business entrepreneurs. Issue 15, specific requests for increased investments on items such as holiday lighting and expanded investment in specific community programs. Interest in enhancing community amenities and programming has been noted. However, line item specific spending requests may be more appropriately addressed with the city's annual budget process, LTAC funding, or related to infrastructure and facilities than through the CFP. The recommendation is, in addition to the CFP, partners like the Waterfront District could also be tasked with prioritizing key city requests. Next is the transportation element and the 3 issues raised by council. Issue 16, ensure coordination with planned route changes for Clallam Transit. Clallam Transit was a key member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and the director was interviewed as part of the discovery process for the plan. The draft already does account for the proposed updates to the bus routes in the transportation appendix. Issue 17, the zigzag is a key transportation element and needs to be replaced. The Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element lists these stairways as a critical city-owned and maintained facility, and the Transportation Appendix further identifies the zigzag at Oak Street on the future project ideas list, proposing a complete replacement with durable, low-maintenance materials. So the recommendation is to elevate the zigzag at Oak Street from the long-term project list into the 6-year CFP with a priority for design and funding. Issue 18, city coordination with the Port Angeles School District on the construction of new schools and strategies to align rezoning, density, and traffic planning near schools. The city is working directly with the school district on their design team through pre-application processes to ensure the construction of new schools are successful and incorporate design elements that meet transportation standards. A representative of the school district has been a key member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and the school district leadership was interviewed as part of the transportation discovery process. Policy LU 710 supports expanded traffic planning near schools, and Policy LU 1.6 supports multifamily and mixed-use development near public schools to create those important hubs. The recommendation is that the council consider appointing a member to participate in the stakeholder meetings associated with the development of the new sidewalk prioritization and connectivity plan in 2026. Next is the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element. Issue 19, Urban Forest Management. The plan does recognize the importance of urban forest management, and Goal HM1 specifically addresses the multiple facets of urban forest management through the implementation of a new urban forestry program here in the city of Port Angeles. Next are the 7 issues within the conservation element. Issue 20, increased setbacks along the marine bluff. The city's shoreline master program, S&P, currently requires a minimum 65-foot setback for all new residential development along designated shoreline residential areas. These setback standards, along with all associated shoreline buffers, are established and periodically updated based on the best available science, subject to strict review and approval requirements from the Washington State Department of Ecology. The recommendation, as part of the next periodic review of the SMP, staff will evaluate whether managed retreat is a feasible and effective strategy for this area. Managed retreat involves relocating people, structures, and infrastructure away from vulnerable coastal areas to address long-term risks such as sea level rise, bluff erosion, and other climate-related hazards. Issue 21, Rainier Mill Land Use and Zoning. Staff recognize the importance of the Rainier Mill site and the need for a complete and timely cleanup of the site by Rainier Properties Incorporated. The current zoning of industrial heavy is clearly not an acceptable choice for the site. Unfortunately, changing the proposed zoning from mixed use to residential will not impact the ultimate approach taken by the Department of Ecology. Based on the community's push in 2021 and city comments directed to Rainier remedial investigation and feasibility study, Ecology did change the cleanup level for the site to unrestricted, which will allow for any future land use the community chooses for the property. The recommendation is to maintain the proposed zoning as mixed use by allowing for a wide array of potential future uses, including the recognition and dedication of the cultural significance of the location to the tribe. Goal LU6 addresses environmentally hazardous sites in the city, including the Rainier Mill site, and explore code changes in 2026 to prohibit the storage of toxic materials on site. Further recommendations are found in policy LU 6.3 that ensures the consultation will occur with the tribe to establish a vision for the future use and development of the site based on post-cleanup conditions and development capacity. The mixed-use designation provides the city and the tribe with the best opportunity to achieve multiple goals related to housing needs, economic development potential, enhanced shoreline access, and opportunities that will preserve open space and improve marine wildlife habitats. Issue 22, more specificity referencing estuaries, timberlands, and resource focus items. As a 20-year document, the goals and policy in the draft plan are written broadly to provide flexibility for implementation. The recommendation is the draft is being reviewed to identify opportunities to strengthen and clarify selected goals and policies. Issue 23, specific regulations and programs such as tree trimming practices and other operational items. While specific operational issues are essential, the draft plan functions as a high-level policy framework for the next 2 decades. Detailed operational practices and service delivery standards are probably more appropriately addressed through specific municipal code sections, the CFP, the budget, and the strategic plan. The recommendation is to maintain the draft comprehensive plan as a high-level policy document, but additionally, the development, as mentioned earlier, of a new urban forestry program will ensure the city is held to best management practices for maintenance of the urban forest environment. Issue 24, about halfway done. Waste recovery through Senate Bill 5284. Council has stated very clearly its priority to actively support waste reduction and recycling efforts. As a result, the hazard mitigation, climate resiliency, and capital facilities elements addressed waste reduction and recycling programs as top priorities. The recommendation is to the full implementation of Senate Bill 5284 in 2030 will be addressed by staff and the city team in close coordination with the state through the annual budget, the CFP, and the council's strategic plan. Issue 25, potential ownership or stewardship opportunities in the Elwha River watershed. The long-term management and stewardship of timberlands, particularly in sensitive areas such as the Elwha River watershed, are a top priority. While ownership and management of these lands involve complex regulatory, financial, and jurisdictional considerations, the comprehensive plan can serve as a framework to explore future opportunities. The recommendation is to add policy to the conservation element that will, quote, say the city will investigate and review various models for timber stewardship. This policy enhancement enables the city to explore options, engage partners, and evaluate potential approaches for long-term management in areas such as the critical watershed. Issue 26, Tree City USA designation supports groundwater protection, stormwater quality, and wildfire risk reduction. Maintaining the Tree City USA designation does align with the city's environmental values and reinforces community priorities around urban forestry, water quality, and resilience. The recommendation is to add a reference to maintaining the Tree City USA designation to the goals and policies section to ensure it is included alongside other environmental priorities such as groundwater protection, stormwater mitigation, and wildfire risk reduction. Next up is the hazard mitigation and climate resiliency element. Issue 27, plan for situations like the Petrocard Indian Creek spill and enhanced watershed protection. The draft plan does include several policies aimed at enhancing emergency preparedness, response, and recovery efforts to mitigate not only the risks and impacts associated with climate hazards, as well as human-caused hazards such as the Petrocard Indian Creek spill. Now, regarding watershed protection, the city's 2025-2030 Capital Facilities Plan directly incorporates watershed protection through investments in water resiliency. Specifically, Project WT0319 establishes a groundwater resiliency program to evaluate and develop a secondary municipal water source. The recommendation is that the 2025 Hazard Mitigation Jurisdictional Plan includes multiple measures to address human-caused events such as the Indian Creek spill. These measures include the construction of the joint public safety facility between the city and the county, as well as continued participation in local and regional hazardous materials spills preparations and responsive exercises. The utilities and public service element is next. Issue 28. Require water positive or demand reducing plumbing fixtures for industrial and maritime development. Industrial and maritime industries do have specific water flow and pressure requirements that are critical to meeting fire life safety, regulatory compliance, and other operational standards. This includes required fire flow, sprinkler systems, and proper water pressures. The recommendation is that the city incentivize growth and expansion of those water positive businesses while maintaining fire and life safety protection. Next are the 9 issues flagged by council in the Housing Action Plan. Issue 29, council priorities for the Housing Action Plan. The draft HAP has been prioritized based on council comments received during the city council work session. Priority 1 is the blighted property reduction strategy. Priority 2, weatherization and home repair. Priority 3, permit-ready plans. Priority 4, housing grants. Priority 5, the fee waiver program. Priority 6, multi-family builders training. Priority 7, homelessness navigator. Priority 8, multi-family housing pilot project. Priority 9, co-living housing. And priority 10, the multi-family property tax exemption. The recommendation is that this prioritized list will be presented to the Planning Commission for their further refinement and recommendation at the October 22nd public hearing. Issue 30, targeted and expanded outreach for the city's weatherization program. The Public Works Department administers the city's weatherization and energy rebate programs. The BPA assesses the city's energy use and allocates a percentage of its funding to support the city's conservation programs. The criteria for qualifying households, as well as the rebates and reimbursements offered, are solely determined by BPA. City staff have directly mailed households on the utility discount list, sharing information on eligibility for the weatherization program. From this outreach, approximately 24 additional households did sign up for the weatherization program. The recommendation is that additional collaboration between the staff of Public Works and Finance is needed to ensure that all eligible households are aware of the utility assistance program and on a more frequent basis. The weatherization program could also be bolstered through advertisements in the PDN, social media, and other targeted outreach opportunities. Finally, a reevaluation of the city's weatherization program for maximum applicability for the community utilization is needed. Issue 31, status of BPA funds without operations at McKinley. The city's energy efficiency funding has historically depended on its power purchases from Bonneville, including those related to the consumption at the McKinley site. In the past, when the mill closed, the city's experienced a significant reduction in its conservation budget during the next rate period. However, due to a unique circumstance at BPA, the upcoming budget cycle starting on October 1st will feature a 3-year energy conservation budget rather than the typical 2-year. Additionally, there may be extra funding for residents available through the Washington State Climate Commitment Act. The recommendation is the city explore applying for a Washington State Commerce HERE grant in order to expand opportunities for additional electrification and rebates. Issue 32 include manufacturers' homes in the permit-ready plan program. Manufactured homes can be used as housing in any residential zone in the city. Local companies such as Wilder have reached out to staff to request being added to the Permit Ready Plan webpage. Staff are developing, as we speak, a universal procedure to add more Permit Ready plans to our library, including those for manufactured homes. The recommendation is that the Housing Action Plan will be updated to include adding manufactured and modular home options to the Permit Ready Plan program. Issue 33, clarify the proposed homelessness navigator position. When the draft Housing Action Plan was written in the spring of 2025, the document was intentionally kept broad to allow space for feedback from the community and stakeholders. After one-on-one meetings with leaders from the Housing Authority, Behavioral Help, Serenity House, TAFI, Habitat for Humanity, and Sarge's Veteran Support, community partners expressed that the position should be primarily created to implement citywide homelessness procedures, i.e. creating and managing a safe parking program, for example. Community partners also hope that this position would facilitate cross-organizational coordination and educate the public about their unhoused neighbors. So the recommendation is to revise the naming of the homelessness navigator to better align with the job's intended purposes. The housing action plan will be updated to clarify that this role will serve as the primary point of contact at the city for any homelessness related issue. Additionally, an important disclaimer will be included stating that this position is contingent upon future funding. Issue 34, healthcare employment projections considering the recent updates at OMC. The Housing Needs Assessment Workforce Profile in the Comprehensive Plan draft illustrates jobs by sector in Port Angeles. The chart compares employment rates by industry in 2011 and 2021 using census data. There are also projected employment by industry charts, which used a 2022 Employment Security Department data to project job growth out to 2032. As this is a 20-year plan, there will undoubtedly be unexpected alterations in various employment sectors over time. The recommendation is the data used in both charts are the most up-to-date data sets currently available. City staff have included a pop-up disclaimer in the Housing Action Plan that explains that this projection was made before the OMC leadership changes and before the partnership with UW Medicine was being considered. Issue 35, address the gap between young adults not being able to afford homes in relation to wages, rental supply, and workforce. The fee waiver program can be used in conjunction with permit-ready plans to build smaller homes and ADUs and save on development costs. The draft co-living municipal code update can also be used to create smaller and more affordable market rate apartments, as well as residential suites within an existing structure. Co-living housing helps to bolster the rental housing stock, and the multifamily pipeline project will also work to create more workforce housing. In addition to city programs, many partner organizations offer USDA zero down payment mortgages to low and moderate income community members. The recommendation, while wage growth is not specifically mentioned in the Housing Action Plan, it is an essential component in the economic development element. The updated draft of the Housing Action Plan will include additions to the workforce profile section to discuss the critical relationship between wage growth and home ownership. Issue 36, affordable housing definition and key partners. The housing element defines affordable housing in accordance with the definition established by the state of Washington to ensure consistency and prevent conflicting information. The affordable housing partners identified in the plan include Clallam County, the Tribe, the Housing Authority as well. The North Peninsula Builders Association has also been included as this nonprofit organization represents a broad spectrum of members in the building trades. Questions were also raised about defining co-living. This term will be fully defined in the city's upcoming municipal code update to comply with the new requirements from the Washington State Department of Commerce. The recommendation is that partnerships should remain broadly defined in the plan. Specific partnership-led projects can be better defined through the city's strategic work plan. Additionally, maintaining alignment with the state's definition of affordable housing avoids any inconsistencies. And finally, co-living will be fully designed in the municipal code update, legislation proposed later this month or early next month. Issue 37, differentiate manufactured homes from other types of alternate housing, such as prefabricated or modular homes. Manufactured, prefabricated, and modular homes are all regulated under the state and national codes, including the IBC and the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries. The draft plan does not differentiate between these categories, as any zone permitting housing would also allow these alternate construction types. The recommendation is to continue allowing manufactured, prefabricated, and modular homes in all zones where housing is permitted. Next is the proposed urban growth area swap. Issue 38. The UGA swap and preserving rural lands. Proposed UGA swap from the Clallam Bay CQ UGA would protect key resource lands in the rural part of the county by redirecting that growth toward areas better served by infrastructure and services. Within the city, industrial lands are generally fragmented into smaller parcels that do not meet the needs of modern manufacturing and industrial users. While the city has zoned land for industrial purposes, much of it is comprised of these smaller lots or sites with physical constraints, resulting in a shortage of large development-ready parcels suitable for manufacturing. This does create a deficit for opportunities that support family wage jobs and long-term economic growth for the city. Additionally, several key properties owned by the tribe could benefit from being included in the proposed UGA swap. By including these parcels, the tribe will have the opportunity to pursue enhanced economic development opportunities that align with the city's infrastructure. This strengthens partnerships and ensures future planned growth benefits the tribe and the wider community. So the recommendation is to continue to explore the potential UGA swap with Clallam County. For proposed changes to the UGA, the city would only consider UGA swaps and not outright expansions. To bolster this commitment, a policy is added that states the city will only consider urban growth area boundary adjustments for a one-to-one swap. The land added to the city's UGA must only be designated for industrial, manufacturing, or heavy and commercial purposes to foster economic growth, create employment opportunities, and strengthen the community's economic base. Issue 39, cost modeling for a UGA swap. The proposed UGA swap is a long-range planning tool and will not take effect immediately. It is included as part of the draft 20-year plan to ensure that future growth is anticipated, strategically located, and consistent with state requirements under the GMA. The swap itself may occur at some point in the future, and any subsequent annexation would be subject to a detailed cost, benefit, and fiscal analysis as required by state law and city procedures. The area under consideration is planned for industrial rather than residential zoning. This land use designation is expected to generate higher tax revenue and employment opportunities while requiring comparatively lower levels of municipal service. As such, the swap positions the city to strengthen its economic base, attract private investment, and create a more balanced relationship between housing and employment opportunities. The recommendation is the proposed UGA swap be presented to the Planning Commission for further refinement and recommendation at their October 22nd public hearing. The next area is citywide rezone. Issue 40, rezone additional properties adjacent to the Race Street corridor. The Race Street corridor remains a key focus for the development of mixed-use areas. Policy LU 4.9 aims to encourage commercial uses on centralized and accessible sites located at the boundaries of neighborhoods, thereby serving multiple areas. The draft rezone proposal increases the intensity of development from 8th Street to 2nd Street, transitioning from commercial office to a better aligned commercial neighborhood or CN zone. The CN zone permits greater building heights, reduced setbacks, which conform to more walkable commercial locations and pedestrian-focused public spaces. The blocks to the east and west of the Race Street corridor are being rezoned from R7 mixed-use density residential to the CO zone. The CO zone permits a mix of commercial and residential uses while also allowing existing development to remain in conformance as a permitted use. The recommendation is to continue with the planned rezone along Race Street. This rezone is supported by the draft plan and demonstrates immediate fulfillment of the plan's vision for Port Angeles and the council's direction to transition to a form-based code. Issue 41, citywide rezone outreach and engagement. To ensure transparency and public access to information regarding the proposed citywide rezone, staff developed several outreach materials. Detailed maps were created outlining the city's current zoning with the proposed rezone areas clearly shown for reference, as well as a map illustrating the proposed future zoning for the affected areas. These materials were published on the Vision 2045 project website, alongside both versions of the updated plan, Housing Action Plan, and draft EIS. A newsflash was published to announce the availability of these documents for public review in several locations across the city's website. Email notifications were also sent to a list of over 800 contacts, including community partners and engaged stakeholders. Upcoming public hearings of the Planning Commission will be fully noticed, and these steps will ensure the city is meeting all noticing requirements for a legislative rezone action. The recommendation is to continue with public engagement and explore additional outreach opportunities to civic organizations, community groups, as well as the city website and traditional notice methods as required by state law. Next is the SEPA EIS. Issue 42. The draft SEPA EIS examines the environmental impacts of 3 proposed alternatives for growth and development throughout the city. Alternative 1 assumes no action, which analyzes growth under the city's existing land use, zoning, and assumes current standards for development citywide. Alternative 2 focuses on dispersed growth throughout the city, which would distribute housing and employment growth citywide by expanding and increasing development and intensity in all zones. And the third alternative would focus housing and employment growth in a centralized area, specifically the downtown. The draft EIS is available on the Vision 2045 website, and the recommendation is at the end of the public comment period, staff will evaluate all of the comments received, and based on that feedback, select one of the 3 alternatives listed in the EIS that most closely aligns with that input. The final EIS will be issued with the chosen alternative for growth development. And finally, next steps. As you can see, the comprehensive plan update process represents extensive community outreach and hundreds of public comments received from local citizens. The draft plan has been formally noticed to the public and state in its current form. The Planning Commission will hold public hearings and may make adjustments before forwarding a formal recommendation to City Council. At this stage, clarifications and minor corrections are very much appreciated. However, to respect the role of the Planning Commission, this may not be the stage for wholesale deletions or major revisions. There will be multiple upcoming meetings on this topic as well. October 22nd, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing. November 12th will be a potential additional continuation of that public hearing at the Planning Commission. November 18th, the City Council may hold its first reading, or December 2nd might be that first reading at the Council. And December 16th is slated for the second reading and City Council final adoption. And with that, hopefully that was less than 40 minutes. Happy to take any questions. We'll take a drink of water or two while you formulate your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Are there questions or comments from council? Drew? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Navarro, go ahead.
Well, I certainly appreciate the response to many of the concerns that were raised. My first question is on issue 7 around the too much land along the waterfront has an industrial land use designation, which was one of the issues that I raised previously. So I'm wondering, I have been trying to find the Harbor Resources Management Plan, and it's like very difficult to find. I'm assuming it's not a city plan. I think it's regional, and I've had the same issue in the past trying to find that plan. And so I know for a fact that it's not on the city. Do you, off the top of your head, remember when that plan was created? Again, I think it was kind of a while ago, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that some of the historic work that has occurred through the city and the port and the county working together has really been in a historic manner and not in recent years. Am I correct in that?
So, Madam Deputy Mayor, you are correct on that. It was quite some time ago that the Harbor Resource Management Plan was done. It was an initiative originally led by Department of Natural Resources that involved a number of local stakeholders. And I believe probably the last time that plan was visited was approximately 2010. But we can provide you with a link to the plan as well as get you the precise date.
That's great. That's great. And it's also very helpful to know that it was DNR and, you know, when you're trying to like wildly Google. I know I've stumbled upon it in the past. I'm bringing it up because I think that looking at a plan that was created at least 10 years ago is like presents some challenges, particularly as we all know, with the challenges that we've all had in recent years with DNR. And so I think that when we're looking at, you know, what doesn't just fit us 10 years ago or 50 years ago, but what fits the city now versus what's it going to fit in, you know, in 20 years, right? I think that's really what I'm asking for, because I don't think that the way that our waterfront has been designed and used fits our needs today, particularly as we are rapidly moving from, you know, what does a working waterfront mean, right? I mean, I'm now spending every day of my life in Port Townsend. And, you know, I mean, the differences are stark between what we consider a working waterfront here and what Port Townsend considers a working waterfront, where, you know, when you're going out to breakfast, the two like greatest breakfast spots to eat at are both on a port property, right? Like you're at the water. And so that's very different from the working waterfront definition that our port has historically used in our community, which I think has been ultimately to our detriment. I know that the port right now is going through their strategic planning process. So I'm hopeful that as we're looking for a comprehensive plan, that we are continuing to, I think, push the port in the right direction, which is to have a more broad definition of what a working waterfront is, right? I mean, like, how horrible is it that when you're on the ODT, you're going through like this ridiculous industrial section where it's like log trucks and, you know, like boats and like, I mean, it's just a mess, right? It's a total mess. The point being that I'm hopeful that we can continue to look at issue 7 and revise sort of, acknowledge that the plans that we have had in the past, did really good work. I wish that DNR would convene something again for all these stakeholders to come to the table. That's really what I'm suggesting here. But just to say and acknowledge that I think that those plans may be a little bit behind the times. I marked down a couple of other things, so I'm just going to keep talking so I have the mic while I'm still here. Sorry. I don't have very many, but as you mentioned, Calvin, it's just a lot of stuff. The other one that I mentioned was in regards to issue 28. Wow, there's a real theme. Oh, sorry. I'm on the supplemental information. Sorry, Calvin, if that helps you out anymore. On page 10.
Yes, thank you.
For folks following along, Navarra is referencing the items as they are numbered in the supplemental memo packet, not in the presentation packet that we got. So
yes, page numbers and items are very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the one that looks like this, if anyone's following along. It looks like a council memo.
It's at the back of the packet.
Yeah, it's behind the presentation, and it is on page 10.
Sorry about that. So that was issue 28 under utilities and public services element. Again, what a theme with my marine infrastructure. I'm just really curious. I'm just raising it as not any kind of issue with the plan, but just to continue that. I think, again, as we're looking at the relationship between industry and community, I think especially in a lot of lower income communities like ours, industry has been used as a way to outside industries have come into low income communities and then have just left. Right. I mean, we've seen that time and time again here in Port Angeles with the closures of these mills, right? In just the most brutal and horrible ways possible. And the reality is that those industries are not going to save us. They haven't in the past. They're not going to in the future. And so I think it's really important for us to be able to acknowledge and think through strategically how do we keep the industries that we have successful, right? So they're not leaving people unemployed in, again, just the most horrible ways possible. I'm very specifically talking about McKinley Mill last year. And, also making sure that we are not sacrificing the needs of our community and the well-being of our community by, through climate mitigation measures. So I think I'm just asking us to continue to balance those things. I think that does come through a lot of, a lot of places in this plan where I think those are the issues that we are seeking to balance. And so I want to acknowledge that. And then I think, the homelessness navigator position, I still just have a lot of challenges with that position. Even with the new recommendations, I don't know if anybody's been reading, again, the Port Townsend leader, but Port Townsend is, I know, it's like, Port Townsend currently preparing to evict a number of people, tens and tens of people who are living in an unsanctioned homeless encampment on city property. And having worked at homeless shelters and in homeless services for many years, and now sort of redoing that work, working with people who are receiving trespass notices, I think it's really important to acknowledge that, having safe parking programs or allowing people to have these programs that are run through cities need to be done very intentionally and strategically and done well with people who are, have a lot of very strong qualifications and aren't having this be their first job. in this sector. I think it's deeply important to get any kind of program like that right. I also think, sorry to put Commissioner Mike French on the spot in the audience tonight, it is also a responsibility of the county to be working on those things and to be working on reducing homelessness in this community. And Mike did a lot of really great work here at the city council on that. So I know I'm not like really calling you out. I think you're doing great work. That being said, I think that those kinds of elements really, I think maybe a better use of our resources, might be to advocate to the county that if we're looking for safe parking programs and, kind ways of responding to the homelessness crisis, that those are really under the bailiwick of the county. And I'm not trying to absolve or reduce our responsibility as council members. There are our residents who are living here unhoused because they cannot afford a place to live. And I think when we're looking at how do we connect these services and people together and make sure that the players in this space are working together, I just don't really think that's our role. I think that's been very firmly under the role of the county forever, designated through the state. That is how the state releases funding. I truly wish it gave it to the cities. I really do. It does not. It gives it to the county for a reason. And so what I would rather see this position to be is, morph into something that's really working around community safety and responding to, as I said before, 911 calls where if you're calling for a call where somebody is clearly just having a mental health crisis, the right response is not to criminalize them. It's to respond with a person who is, is a social worker, right? A licensed clinical social worker who is going to be able to provide them with adequate services and get them connected to the help they need, like the Rediscovery program, has done a lot of great work on. And we know that the challenges with that is that they are in co-response and they don't respond all the time. So I think that we could continue to rework that position. And then the last one I just wanted to talk more about is that firstly, I was in favor of the UGA land swap. So I'm not sure I was very clear about that last time, but I am strongly in favor of it. I know that not all council members were, that's okay. And I continue to think about, again, the sort of looking at what does industry mean in our community. And to me, I'm not sure that we as a council have really actually thought about what industry means. Does it mean the Amazon warehouse? Does that mean building on wetlands? Does that mean, putting in more marine trades? Does it mean expansion of the airport? I don't really know what kind of industries are we trying to get ChatGPT server farms, right? I think that, over the years, we've heard a lot of different very creative proposals from members of the community and members of council about ways that industry could be growing and evolving here in Port Angeles. And I'm certainly not the expert in that, but I feel like, and maybe it is in the plan, so, definitely update me if that's true. But I think that having some idea about what does industry mean, and particularly what kinds of industries are we sort of hoping to solicit in those areas, so I think that would be kind of helpful to nail down. And I know from hearing from Colleen McAleer and folks at the port that this is something that they continually bring up, is that we don't have enough space for industrial uses. And so I think even hearing from some of them or, whoever it is to sort of figure out what really is our direction around economic development and industry, particularly like these. When we're talking about industry, I'm thinking about like heavy machinery, logging, boat building. And so I think a lot of them that are sort of in this potential UGA land swap seem to be kind of like out a little bit. So anyhow, I'm just interested in hearing what sort of where we're sort of hoping to go in that, and what kind of industries are we hoping to bring in? And again, I'm not expecting an answer tonight, just to be clear, but that I think that would be helpful to know as we are looking for a UGA land swap that might be more industry focused, because I think that I would be in favor of it regardless of its designation.
Thank you, Namara. Drew.
Yeah, following that, I basically just have a question regarding terms. Page 4 of the actual memo, land use element number 6, council has provided direction to staff to enact form-based code. I'm actually on page 4 of that, down with the recommendation. Another tool the city could use in 2026 would be to state residential districts rather than residential zones. Can you very briefly just tell me in my head, those are exactly the same thing. So obviously they are not. Will you tell me what the difference between a residential district versus a residential zone, please?
Councilmember, thank you for that question. I think as we transition to form-based code, I think one of the things we have not done is actually moved from what is currently a very traditional zoning map to more of a district approach that really indicates the form of the future of that particular area. And sometimes it's done in a series of transects, sometimes it's done in a form of districts, but it's really an important part of that transition to form-based code so that we're not just transitioning the language within the code, which we've been working on for quite some time. We have more work to do on that, but it makes sure that we're also taking care of the mapping so that the mapping doesn't paint a picture that all we're doing is traditional Euclidean-based zoning.
Thank you. That's all I had. I really appreciate the comprehensiveness of this entire packet. I found it very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay, go ahead.
Thanks for this presentation. And if it's possible to pull up that image that I sent over, that'd be great. Yeah, I appreciate this. Very comprehensive review of council comments. I'm glad we're doing this now because too often we get to the end stages of a planning process and it's like the train is already moving at 60 miles per hour and we're not really able to do anything about it, even though we're supposed to vote on it at the end. I had two major concerns. One was the proposed future land use map, and the other was the UGA swap. Happy to address both of those in turn. And maybe I'll talk about the second one first because Carrie's still pulling that up. So with the UGA swap, I had a meeting this morning with a port commissioner, a county commissioner, and the director of community development for the county, and learned a lot more about kind of what the intended goals are. And it's much more what's shared in the presentation tonight, more than what we heard at our work session. So I don't have the same concerns about it as I did before. I do think we have to line up a number of different planning procedures to really get that right. And the reason is just moving that land into the urban growth area isn't itself going to make sure that it's available for industrial use. We already have a lot of land in the West UGA, the unincorporated part of the city, that in my mind, when you drive out Edgewood Drive, you see a lot of small parcels as addressed earlier. That's not available when somebody's like, hey, we need 35 acres for industrial land. Can we do that? And so there's a lot on us, on the county, to basically do the planning processes that we've agreed to do through the countywide planning process in order to get to that point. So one suggestion out of that meeting this morning was to invite Director of Community Development, Bruce Emery, to present kind of on the overall framework of that. So that would be something I'd like to see happen, or I can make a motion to make that happen as well. I think it'd be valuable to have the Planning Commission and Utility Advisory Committee because that affects everybody here together. And then on form-based code, Carrie, if you could scroll down to page 3, there's a diagram, and make that green thing really big if possible, please. So, we're talking about form-based code, but this is a great diagram for really like seeing it and what it could be. And the thing is, we are so close to getting rid of the like SimCity style, residential, commercial, industrial, although still having designated industrial makes sense. But when it comes to residential and commercial, we really we want to live in a city where like was mentioned earlier, we have corner stores that people can walk to from their homes. So this is one model of form-based. Carrie, if you could even make it bigger, just like have the T1 to that T6 take up the whole screen, please. That's really big. So this is one framework, and this is very different than the framework that Makers Architects took back in 2020, 2021, where really they were looking at like the facade of buildings. This more looks at the zoning or the land use of a city. And it looks at intensities that go from what's described here as T6, like the urban core. That's like our downtown Port Angeles. You can see like the building takes up the entire parcel. It's built all the way to the sidewalk and all the way to the alley. Most of the land is the building and the street. And then you go to like a less intense, like T5, that urban center, you still have buildings built to the street, but there's open space in the back. There might be other things like accessory dwelling units. And then T4, kind of general urban zone, T3 suburban zone. Most of a city like Port Angeles is probably going to be T3, T4, T5, a little section of T6 or maybe T6 running along major streets like First and Front and Lincoln. And then T2, rural zone, like we don't actually want that in the city. That's for Commissioner French to figure out how to make that work. Because we don't want to be trying to provide sewer lines to T2 and provide urban style utilities to T2. That would be very hard for us to do cost effectively. The challenge I think we have with Port Angeles is so much of our city is currently T3, T2. We still call it in the proposed future land use map, low, medium density residential, and that's still the majority of the land mass in the city as proposed. But yet we've basically said you can also build like T4, maybe even T5 in those areas. So we're still calling it low, medium density residential, but we're allowing a lot more use there. And then, we get to this T1 natural zone. Port Angeles is almost this transect. If you think of like Lincoln Street from downtown all the way up, basically, you head up into Olympic National Park, we have this kind of transect in our community already. And a lot of the theory in like this kind of zoning is this is how cities evolved before we got all like zoning heavy and like, we're going to tell you what you can do on your property sort of thing. So higher density in the center. One of the benefits of this, and this is why I keep pushing this, is this has kind of a natural progression of zoning intensity. So when you have your T6 adjacent to your T5, adjacent to your T4, adjacent to your T3, there's a natural progression. And so when it's time to upzone, when it's time to say, hey, like there's an interest in more apartments in Port Angeles. Well, we don't take some of that T2 rural zone out by the airport, say, and say, oh, there's some area where somebody wants to build an apartment. Let's, what we call spot zone, let's just say that area can now be like T5. And so suddenly we have a bunch of T5 way out on the outside of town. And then we have to figure out, oh, how do we provide 5-minute fire response time to that urban center zone that's way out on the outskirts of town? That's what we've been doing with our current zoning. And I think that's what we're going to continue to do with the proposed future land use map. We're basically picking and choosing, oh, this part can be mixed use, that part's still going to be low, medium density residential. And then when it comes time for change, we as the council are going to be asked to spot zone or individually pick parcels to get to move to what the owner of that parcel wants to try to do on that property. If we instead take an approach that basically like has a logical upzoning sequence built into it, I think we can see a development pattern in Port Angeles that's able to better utilize the services that are more concentrated in the center of town, less concentrated on the outside of town. And we won't deal with those, well, not as likely, basically like individual parcels that have a ton of value or don't have a lot of value based on a decision that we make as the government. And I think one of the things we should strive to do is not pick winners and losers in our land use patterns. Let's basically create a city where everybody who's like, hey, I want to try to increase housing in Port Angeles and I own these parcels, could try to do that in a way that is reasonable for the neighborhood, for the part of town that they live in. So I think we're really close to this. When I look at the future land use map, like we could almost turn this into this transect style form. And I think it's worth pushing for because of that logical upzoning sequence. So that's my pitch for that. Do I need a motion for Bruce Emery, or what's your favor?
I think we're happy to see what the next meeting of council that you might be able to attend to come present.
All right, thank you all.
Right, any additional comments or questions? All right, go ahead, Latricia.
Just thanks for getting all my 72 comments in there. Appreciate it. I didn't count them, Calvin did.
All right, yep, John, go ahead.
Thanks for this. As a new person, it's nice to see some of the background that, 2010, I just started teaching. So that's nice to know, kind of clarification on that. I'm appreciative about the collaboration with the school district and everything. And I noticed that when we go back to this, thanks for answering that question, by the way. Lots of things here. There was on that thing a recommendation for a council member to be part of a sidewalk, and that would be something I'd be really interested in being part of. Considering my kids work, my kids go to school around the schools, I love to collaborate in that part. So I just want to put that pitch out there when the time comes. I appreciated the explanation about the district because I was also confused about that. So that was really clarifying for me. I just, anything that, when we talk about form-based code and coding, I would just like there to be a conversation before on any kind of staffing or fiscal considerations so that we can make sure we're making the best economical, fiscal decisions regarding those and helping our residents know, through further education or dashboards or whatever it takes, like, here's how this will change what your neighborhood is going to look like or what you can do with your land. I just know, like, these are big decisions and I just want to keep our community informed on anything, however we can. Whether that's, like sit downs or mailers or something on the website, just anything like that in the future as we work towards that direction and vision. So, but yeah, appreciate the comprehensive review of all the questions about this plan. And I just look forward to working on this some more. So thanks for your time on this.
Thank you, and noted that you're interested in an assignment for that.
Write me down.
You might have to fight some of the rest of us who've also spent time walking to school. All right. If there isn't anything else right now, yep, go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, there are two more comments that I want to make.
Okay.
The school thing is really important. You look at the future land use map, and we basically say where there's currently schools, we're going to call those public facilities. And in the advisory meeting, the school district representative was really, really concerned about basically like protecting those particular little isolated pockets, because that's like the only place that they could build schools. We should have a more flexible land use plan, one where like, hey, if it makes sense to actually build a high school, like I'm gonna daydream, like where the parking lot is in front of Goodwill, like they could actually do that. And let's make sure our plans are flexible enough that it's not the school district basically holding on to these legacy parcels as the only place where they can build, but actually integrating it and saying, oh, well, you want to be in more of the urban core, as long as you build your school that is that densing and massing that we expect along Lincoln Street, then you can be there. So let's make it more flexible in that way as well. And finally, there's a challenge we have with the interlocking plans. We did the shoreline master plan, and now it's like, hey, we'll update some of this stuff when we get the shoreline master plan. But when we did the shoreline master plan, we got the same thing about the Growth Management Act. It's like, oh, that's not for shoreline master plan. We can't do that now. We have to update the Growth Management Act. So there's a bit of a like, we can't move one thing forward because the other thing doesn't say it. And then it's like, well, when we get to the other thing, well, we didn't move the shoreline master plan forward, so now we can't. So I think it's important that we move ahead with these plans when they come up. Right now, it's the comprehensive plan. So let's move this forward. And if we then need to update the shoreline master plan, we do that at the next update. But let's not hold back on the comp plan now, because when we get to the shoreline master plan, then we'll say, oh, the comp plan doesn't support that. So we're not going to move that forward. And so the inertia here should be moving forward with the plans that best serve Port Angeles going into the future, not saying, well, that plan used to have that, and so we can't move this plan, because I've seen that now after almost 8 years. And so like, keep driving this forward. Our staff know how to do this. I think the council is interested in seeing us. Our partners, developers, the county want to see this happen. Let's keep driving forward at Port Angeles. That is more walkable, that is more livable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right. Yes, go ahead.
It's a follow-up question to what Lindsay stated. Wouldn't high schools or schools also be allowed in mixed use, not just public? I mean,
Planning Supervisor Broderick is calling in from a planners conference. And I don't know if you have the proposed document in front of you, and you can answer that question about would school educational facilities be allowed in all zones if they meet the massing requirements. If not, we'll definitely follow up after this meeting, Councilmember.
I can speak to that. Yeah, our objective is to allow schools in every zone. Allow those types of facilities so that they don't have a barrier to location. They can pick the location that works best for the facility.
Follow-up question, then why have public facility zones marked for the schools at all on the future land use map?
In the past, we had a public buildings and parks, or the open space designations, and we've split them to open space and public facilities to designate where those locations are.
So I have a follow-up question to that, which is, no, never mind. I can't form my question right now. I'll follow up later with Calvin. That's good.
We've noted the concerns, Mayor, and have been keeping good notes tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fruitful conversation. Like, we were joking in the advisory committee, like, why not just have like 2 zones, like urban and like industrial, and that like covers it. Maybe we also have like no build zones, like bluffs and streams, but like this is the future. Let's not hold legacy structures just for the sake of having a public facility zone that you could otherwise do stuff in anyway. So that's what I mean. Like, let's move it forward and not hold on to the past.
All right, thank you. Anything else from council? Okay, well, I don't know about anybody else, but I need another break. So, and we lost our high school students before I had a chance to say anything. So they're going to be all set. They're going to go finish their homework and write about the comp plan. So, or dream about it, one of the two. So we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and finish up with the other items on the agenda. Thanks. All right, we need to get started again. Oh.
Yeah, that's where I can.
All right. Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, we lost most of our audience, but okay. We are going to pick up with item I-5, and that is permanent committee appointments, and I'm going to go to the clerk for that.
Mayor, both of us were still preparing, so we're still trying to get to that memo. So
all right, no problem.
1 second.
It's on page I-8 for what it's worth.
And Mayor, I'm going to raise Carrie, and whoever gets there first,
Okay.
we'll do it.
That's true. Your name is on the memo as well, so.
Got it.
Yeah. Mayor Dexter, what you have before you tonight is the consideration of 3 appointments to 3 of our permanent committees. On page I-10, you'll see the history document of when the ad hoc committee met to consider and to interview these folks. And so after all is said and done, we do have 3 recommendations from that committee, and you may want to check in with some of the members that were on that as far as their recommendations.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to staff and the ad hoc committee for your work on this. I know we've been doing them a lot. It feels like a lot lately. It probably feels more like that to you all. But I am happy to hear from anyone who wants to add anything, and also would be happy to entertain a motion. Navarra.
I'll make the motion and then speak to it. I move to approve the appointment to the city's permanent committees as detailed in the tables below.
Second.
Thank you. I was debating whether or not to actually read the people's names, but felt like that was just fine. Drew's our chair, but I will just take the opportunity to say that I think we got a lot of really great applications, and getting to interview people and getting to meet people, I think is always, it's always a difficult choice when you have really great applicants where you're like, I really just want the 2 of you on these boards, right? Or a couple of you. And so I think that's some of what we had this time around, which I think ultimately is a really good and positive place to be, knowing that, it seems like you can't really make a wrong choice. So I do just want to acknowledge that, I think, we as the committee and the applicants who applied took, it was a process, and we had a lot of people we interviewed, and I'm just really grateful for the folks who applied, and to be able to have, I think, some really well-qualified people to help advise us.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? All right. Amy, since your camera's on, I think we can try unanimous consent. We have a motion to appoint to the city's permanent committees, to approve the appointments to the city's permanent committees as detailed in the tables below. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. And then we have our late item, and I'm going to go to City Manager West for that.
So Mayor and Council, the city's made a number of major investments in federal grant applications. These grants have been awarded and are under contract, and it is our goal to ensure those existing grant contracts are upheld. The most efficient and cost-effective way to protect our investments is to join with other jurisdictions to protect our local community from being burdened by additional costs that have been committed to and that have been committed to by the federal government. We want to ensure that those contracts are adhered to, and for that reason, at this time, staff is recommending that council authorize the city manager to take action necessary to join the King County versus Turner lawsuit.
So moved.
Second.
All right, everyone's seconding. That's good. Okay, so we have a motion to authorize the city manager as to do what's necessary to join this lawsuit as mentioned. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition.
Discussion.
Wait, we can sorry first. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Staff, what is the deadline for us to be able to get back to you on this?
The deadline is tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to. I was like, let's go. All right. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, the Trump regime is asking us to sign contracts that allow them to change them unilaterally at will. They're asking us to give up fundamental values of supporting the health and safety of our community. They're violating the contracts clause of the U.S. Constitution, probably the Administrative Procedures Act as well. This is an opportunity for us to try to join in under an existing preliminary injunction issued by a Western District of Washington judge against Trump regime administrative agencies, and it makes the most sense. I would also support filing our own lawsuit if we're not able to get into King County versus Turner, but hopefully we'll be able to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any other? Okay. So we have a motion to authorize the city manager. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but authorize the city manager to take the necessary steps to join the King County versus Turner lawsuit. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we go to J1, and I'm going to go to Director Curtin for that tree trimming contract.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, I'm on page J1 of the packet this evening. Staff is seeking council approval to award a maintenance contract to Xylem LLC of Snohomish, Washington, for our tree trimming 2025 contract, CON 2025-04. This proposal directly aligns with strategic focus area number 4, infrastructure development, maintenance, and connectivity. Funding is available in the 2025 light operations budget under account number 401-7180-533.48-10 for power line tree trimming services in the amount of $125,000. And in the streets budget under account 102-7230-542-4810 in the amount of $11,500. I would just like to add, as you saw from the presentation on the comprehensive plan, I am aware and have tasked staff with gathering some additional information on the Tree Utility City, Tree USA related to this. I would also like to say that over the last 6 months, Public Works has coordinated with our arborists 6, 7, 8 times on various tree removals within the city. So we are coordinating those efforts. In the event that we actually have to remove a tree, a hazard tree, for example, that is in power lines, that is beyond just maintenance pruning, we are actually replacing that with a new tree in an area that is more appropriate for that tree to go. So with that said, the recommendation this evening from staff is awarding this contract with Xylem LLC of Snohomish, Washington for the tree trimming 2025 contract CON 2025-04 in an amount not to exceed $136,500, including taxes, and authorize the city manager to sign all contract related documents, to administer the contract, and to make minor modifications if necessary.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Lindsay, go ahead, unless you want to speak to your motion. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the reference to the Tree City USA certification, which we'd have. This should go to Tree Line USA instead. Tree Line USA is for utilities, and I don't see us on the list of Arbor Day Tree Line USA certification. And I think that's part of why we consistently exceed the project contribution minimum requirements is we're putting the utility expenses into the Tree City USA designation. So I guess after this motion, I'll make a motion that we apply for Tree Line USA certification as well.
Anyone else want to speak to the current motion? Drew?
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that while this company is not local, they were also the only one to actually place a bid. And so it's important to recognize that this is the option that we have been given.
Thank you, Drew. Sorry. Anyone else? Amy, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a very quick question. On most of the memos that we receive, there's usually a little blurb about why we're going out to contract for this and why the city can't manage the task on its own. And if I could hear a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
So that's a great question. So on occasion, we do. In this particular contract, we've identified a larger area, and it would just take away from too much other work. There's also liability issues that are in play. So some of this involves more complicated trees that, just from a liability standpoint, aren't necessarily in the city's best interest to address. So the one-offs, like I said, earlier, that we've been coordinating with CED and our arborists. We have been doing those throughout the year. We're trying to do a larger sections now, and it's just more appropriate to have the assistance of a professional assist us with that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we have any other? Okay, I didn't see anyone jumping up and down, but I should always ask. We have a motion to award a maintenance contract to Xylem I LLC of Snohomish, Washington, or Xylem One. Sorry, I missed that when you said it. Of Snohomish, Washington, for the tree trimming 2025 contract CON 2025-04 in an amount not to exceed $136,500, including taxes, and authorize the city manager to sign all contract-related documents to administer the contract and to make minor modifications if necessary. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And Lindsay, go ahead.
Like I mentioned, there are two Arbor Day certifications. One is Tree City USA, the other is Tree Line USA. Tree Line USA, the website says, we believe the power grid and the urban forest can thrive together, and we recognize utility providers who make that vision a reality through thoughtful community first practices. Tree Line USA, program of the Arbor Day Foundation, celebrates forward-thinking utilities that follow best practices in utility arboriculture, strengthening reliability, sustainability, and public trust. We are both, we're a city that also runs an electric utility. So I do think we should try to be Tree Line USA certified as well. I think that fits in the general purpose and goals and mission of the city. We actually have talked about this years ago when I was on council, but there's lots of important things happening, and this is a minor thing, but I think it's worth doing anyway, since we're talking about it and referencing it. So I move to direct staff to apply for Tree Line USA certification.
Second.
Okay. I feel the motion has been made and seconded. It feels a little like a late item, though it is tangentially related to this. But I would be interested in hearing from staff if you know anything about it and feel prepared to answer a question about it, because I appreciate Lindsay's perspective and am curious about. Yeah.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't specifically. I have tasked staff about a week ago to begin research and to report back to me with the parameters of what's involved. And I'd be happy to bring that back to council at a later date, just to understand if there is additional cost ramifications that may have budgetary impacts and things like that. I'd be happy to bring that back at a future date and make a more informed decision at that time.
Thank you. Lindsay, go ahead.
How much time do you want? Because we can certainly table this motion till then.
I would 4 weeks. The next meeting to the meeting after.
I move to table this motion until the first meeting in November. Sorry, I'm got a loss of time here.
Second.
Okay. It is not debatable. All those in favor of the motion to table, all those in favor of the motion to table the current motion until the first meeting of November.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first meeting of November, I guess let me rephrase that. All those opposed to the motion to table the current motion to the first meeting of, until the first meeting of November, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes, so we'll put that on that meeting's agenda. Okay, and next up, we have the VMware licensing renewal, and I'm gonna go to Calvin first.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll find this information started on page J4 of your packet. The city utilizes a software product known as VMware to host over 70 virtualized server environments used for multiple critical systems the city relies upon. VMware software licensing requires an annual renewal. The annual renewal cost changed in 2025 due to VMware changing its products and licensing. The proposed VM software renewal does align with strategic focus area number 2, citywide resource optimization, by reducing the physical hardware needed to run critical servers. Funding is available in the council-approved 2025 IT budget. So tonight's recommendation is to 1, approve the renewal for VM virtualization software from SHI under Washington State Department of Enterprise Services Contract 05820 in the amount not to exceed $351,095.04, including tax, over a 5-year period. And 2, authorize the city manager to execute all purchase documents, to administer the purchase, and to make minor modifications if necessary. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion as just stated. Drew, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I just want a clarification real fast. Page 2, so J5, purchasing would be made through an approved vendor and reseller under Washington State Department of Enterprise Services contract. Do they not act as their own vendor outright?
Councilmember, I'm going to ask IT Manager Watercutty to answer that question.
VMware does not directly sell to customers. They're like many large software companies that use vendors, negotiate larger kind of deals. So for example, we benefit from these NASPO contracts and the rates negotiated, and SHI is the vendor that we go through for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
John, go ahead.
Just a quick question on the table on page J5. Are those projected costs for each year, or were those quoted, given to us from the vendor?
So the table lays out the 5-year renewal costs as quoted from VMware through SHI. So if we are continue annually, this is what our annual renewal costs will look like over a 5-year period. That can't be altered, right? As in, they can't raise the rate in year 5 more than what is already laid out there.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, Eric. Amy has a question. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks. I always see these contracts and feel like sometimes we're being held hostage. And so I guess I just wanted to ask, do we have options, or is there a way to negotiate any of these rates?
Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Yes, staff aggressively negotiated on this. Unfortunately, the pool of suppliers is fairly limited, but IT Manager Watercutty, because of his negotiating, was able to decrease the initial cost, I believe, which was $86,000 for next year, or this year, down to the $47,000. IT Manager Watercutty, do you want to add anything more to that?
The only thing that I want to add is I share the sentiment that it's pretty horrible when you do your budgeting diligently and plan on an amount for a renewal, and then you get hit with only like a few days to spare with a dramatically different price. And so because of this, my team and I have been aggressively looking at alternatives to VMware. However, switching time and costs involved in migrating to a different hypervisor platform are significant. So we're working on plans to possibly leave this particular brand of software and find something that's more sustainable for the city.
I really appreciate that answer, and thank you for all of your work and negotiations.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Just going to remind myself we do have a motion. I had to think about it for a second. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the renewal for VMware virtualization software from SHI under Washington State Department of Enterprise Services contract number 05820 in the amount not to exceed $351,095.04, including tax over a 5-year period, and authorize the city manager to execute all purchase documents to administer the purchase and to make minor modifications as necessary. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to council reports, and we'll start with Latricia. Give John a chance to be prepared for his first one.
I actually don't have anything to report at this time. I've been very busy, but nothing to report.
Okay, very good. Drew, go ahead.
You're supposed to give me enough time for my calendar to load. City's Wi-Fi is not very fast.
I can go to Amy.
Yes, please go to Amy for a second, please.
Amy, would you like to give your report?
Sorry, Drew, I have no report.
Do you want to defer to Lindsay and we can come back to you?
Yeah, because I have to turn off all the other calendars, so I just see the ones that are related to the city.
Okay, very good. Lindsay, do you want to go ahead?
Right. Apologies to Anne Marie and nice point of order, Councilmember Miller. This is a quote. Terrible things are happening outside at any time, day or night. Poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. That was Anne Frank in 1943. So, like we governed through the Trump administration, part one, and then COVID. And, we're at this point now where, we're having to make hard decisions about how to protect people in our community. And, having a very hostile federal government. I know that means that we are challenged to, figure out, how institutions work relative to the people we know in our communities. But I mean, the reality is people are terrified by what is happening. And, I think that quote resonates because, we know what was happening in 1943, and yet the quote sounds like things that are happening today. So a number of people in the community are concerned about a Border Patrol assisting a Port Angeles police, I think a wellness check. So, I mean, there was a weapon involved. I get it. The police officer was, the only one able to respond to that time. Second person to show up was Border Patrol. But in September, we asked, what's the connections that we're having? And from our September 16th council packet memo, page I2, U.S. Border Patrol agents occasionally assist Port Angeles Police Department with traffic control at collisions or with search and arrest warrant service. U.S. Border Patrol agents have participated in the active shooter area law training cadre. Under Washington law, the U.S. Border Patrol agents have state arrest authority in areas of violent crime, fugitives, and felonies. The U.S. Border Patrol is also one of our firearms range users and pay a fee to the city for the ability to utilize the range. I remember asking about my concern with the traffic control at collisions, does that put Border Patrol in contact with our residents? And Chief Smith was like, well, they're doing traffic control, so they're not interacting with people. But the recent call for service involved, I believe, Border Patrol basically showing up and saying, we'd like to help. And we said, sure, you can help. I don't know the race or immigration status of any of the people involved, but it's hard to reliably say to somebody, you can call 911 and Border Patrol won't show up at your house, because it seems like that is actually what's happening. And we now know, based on U.S. Supreme Court emergency shadow docket, that Border Patrol can decide, based on the race of someone based on them speaking with an accent, based on them being dressed like a gardener or like a housekeeper, at least in Los Angeles, but presumably along the border here too, that's enough for reasonable suspicion for a Border Patrol officer. So how are we protecting all of our community members and making it clear that they can safely call 911 and not face deportation, not face what Anne Frank described in 1943, of families being torn apart, men, women, and children separated, children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. I mean, I've helped people prepare parenting plans where it's like, who do you know who's a US citizen who could take your kids from school if you got kidnapped by ICE? We should not be cooperating with ICE or Border Patrol, which is acting like ICE in our community because we're along the border. And when we asked for information, we didn't get, Border Patrol listens to our scanner and shows up and we say, hey, thanks for the help. And now I get why the officer said that, but that wasn't transparent to us as a council. And it concerns me because I think it's the argument that law enforcement made to the INS, the Immigration Nationalization Service, which is ICE before Homeland Security in the 1990s, was, hey, look, if we cooperate in immigration, people aren't going to call us. They're not going to call us for a wellness check when somebody might hurt themselves because they're more concerned with somebody being abducted out of the household. So we've now gone to basically what we saw in Forks and Clallam County in the 2000s, which is Border Patrol conveniently stops at a traffic stop for translation services. And it's like, hey, I happen to be in the area. Mind if I translate or interpret for this traffic stop? And that is the behavior that is those agencies have stopped, partly because they were sued by the ACLU and NERP, and they settled. But like, we are still doing that behavior where it's like, oh, well, it's convenient to work with that Border Patrol officer, so we're going to do that. And the outcome when that Border Patrol car is sitting in front of a house with a PAPD vehicle next to it is the community knows that it's not safe to call 911 if you have anyone in your household who's undocumented. And I don't think that's what we want as a council. I don't think that's what we want as staff. I don't think that's what our police department wants. And so we need to implement some policies to distance ourselves from the Border Patrol, even though they might be our friends, even though they might be other boys in blue, like even though we might shoot together, the active shooter training and cadre thing, like that is not a way for our community to feel safe. Thank you. I think some of these things come to issues we brought up as a council, and I think we've been trying to work toward as a staff for a while, like the idea of the lack of crisis response. We need, EMT basic and a social worker to be able to be dispatched through 911 24/7 in order to respond for a wellness check, for other issues. And, if there's a weapon involved, they can say, hey, this is beyond what we want to deal with. We're going to call the officer who has use of force authorization. We don't. But that's a thing we've been bringing up for a while. And I think having some of these programs in place would help us be able to not get to these situations where we turn to help from an agency that has lacked the public's trust at this point in time. And again, I'm not speaking to the particular Border Patrol officer. They're part of an institution right now. And I think they have to understand that that's in a situation for them. So that was the heavy part of my council report. I also want to speak to an issue that has bugged me for a long time and has been brought up by developers for a long time while I've been on council. And that's the urban service standards and guidelines. Does anyone on council know this? So you review the municipal code, Port Angeles Municipal Code, and think, okay, now I know what the rules are. I'm going to go in and get the permit. And then city staff present you with this thing called the USSG, or Urban Service Standards and Guidelines. And this is basically all the extra rules that you have to comply with in order to get the permit or the thing or do the development you want to do. We have authorized the urban service standards and guidelines. It's in Port Angeles Municipal Code 18.08.130. And it basically says each city department that is responsible for administering the urban services set forth in this chapter shall have the authority to develop, update, administer, and enforce standards and guidelines which describe how the urban service requirements set forth in this chapter are to be met. Those standards and guidelines, they'll meet the following requirements. They shall be consistent with this chapter, the comprehensive plan, and the applicable state and federal laws. A current copy of the standards and guidelines shall be filed with the city clerk. The standards and guidelines and their applications to a particular development may be appealed to the city manager. So this never comes to city council. This never even comes to the hearings examiner. And there's no process that I can find in the municipal code, please correct me if I'm wrong, where like we actually review changes to the urban service standards and guidelines, or the public gets to make comments on them. As far as I can tell, the staff basically can update this document and make sure the city clerk has an updated copy of it. Now, this does follow the structure of law of like administrative law, which is where the legislative body says this is like what we want to see, and then the agency, puts it forward. But in that context, whether it's federal law, just to whatever extent it still applies, or state law, there's administrative procedures, and there's a whole process by which the administrative agency has to say, hey, we're going to change this, we want to accept comments. I mean, I shouldn't ask John, but like, have you ever been asked about a change in the urban service standard guide? He's saying no. So we have no process for making sure that this document is ultimately accountable to the council or the public. And absent that, I don't feel like this is how we should be making law. And to be clear, this is law. I mean, these are rules people have to follow, just like they have to follow the municipal code, except there's no process by which this gets amended and made transparent or even known about until, I mean, I've heard people be like, and then suddenly there was this thing called the Urban Service Standard and Guides. So one way to deal with this would be to just eliminate this section 18.08.030, and then let's put these things in the municipal code. I know that makes the municipal code longer, but it also removes the tentacles that we talked about in the code update and makes it so that all the rules are in one spot. And it also makes sure that the people's representative, the council, has the ability to review those rules and people know, hey, I want to change that. That doesn't make sense. And we can do that, just like any other ordinance update. I know that would be a lot of work, but I also think that would be more transparent and more accountable. And I don't understand why we have this document that is law at the city that we have authorized, but yet have no process to make sure that that's accountable to the needs of our community. So that is something that I hope to address in the next couple of months. Just want to front load it with the rest of the council. Thanks.
Thank you, Drew. I'm going to assume that your calendar is updated by now, unless we still have dial-up, and I'm pretty sure we don't.
So looking over my calendar, back on the 30th, we did have the ad hoc committee appointments, meetings for appointments. That was a giant slate of a whole bunch of them, but focused on, that one was mostly on UAC related. We did have our Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission meeting as well. That was in person at the Holiday Inn Express in Sequim. That was fun to attend. A lot of good information, a lot of stuff that is not surprising. However, now I have harder numbers. Of course, Canadian ridership is down on the Coho, no surprise. It's about, don't quote me on this one, I think it's around 35% down, give or take. International travel is relatively flat. And tourism is actually relatively flat in Washington right now. And lodging tax collections are actually up. So a lot of the numbers seemed odd and almost contradictory. The best I've been able to sort out talking with other professionals and at OPTC is, as far as the lodging tax collections go, they believe it's not entirely connected to room rate increases and inflation.
They have been seeing a lot of room rentals based around in-state residents going to other places, but also the state of Washington has a lot of projects, particularly out here right now, that require workers to stay in rooms. And so that's helping to kind of pad the lodging tax collections right now. And we are still seeing international travelers. Apparently India, we are getting a lot of travelers in Washington state right now. Moving forward for the rest of this week, tomorrow is the Clallam County PUD's Clean Energy Implementation Plan presentation. It's a Zoom meeting that they'll be going over kind of what they're doing. And then I was one of 2 or 3 council members invited to go with, I believe, Commissioner French to a ORCA inspection up on Industrial Parkway on Friday. That's going to be at the Port Angeles Hardwood Mill, if I can talk. Long day. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Navarro.
Well, always hard to follow Lindsay, especially when there's so much to say and how do you say it. So I think I'm going to save any future comments about our collaboration with ICE until a further date, other than to just say that I think one of the notes that Lindsay ended on, I think is really important, that we as council members are going out, at least people in the community are asking me, is it safe to call 911? And then when we give an answer that is yes, our police department has told us that we don't work with ICE. I think it certainly erodes the public trust, and the public trust that I think is really important that we as council members are adequately and accurately communicating what our policies of our city is. And so I think to me, it's really important that when we get information that is, very public, that we are able to tell and distill that information in a way where we're being truthful, and we're able to communicate those things so that we're not unintentionally causing residents of our community to be deported. I think to Lindsay's point about writing up the safety plans, I was writing up safety plans or attempting to write safety plans in Forks a couple of weeks ago. And I was invited as a council member and an attorney who, has talked here in council chambers about the ways that we as a city and our police department have, I think, come out very strongly in our in the ways that we have chosen not to work with Border Patrol. And when I was trying to do the safety plans, we were getting questions from community members asking us, saying, are you going to write down the names of my kids? And it's like, yeah, it's got to be in the plan. And they said, no, thank you. Because they don't want a record of their undocumented children anywhere where they are going to be taken away. How horrible. Can you imagine? Like, what an unimaginable horror that you don't even feel safe enough talking to an attorney, right? Because you don't know them. These people don't know me at all. Like, I understand that, right? And we will keep going out. We will keep helping people. We'll it's all about helping folks understand that there are people that are interested in helping and are going to be on the right side of history here. And I hope that that's our city. And I hope that when we're communicating our policies, we're communicating them well and accurately. And if we need to change policies from the city council level, I think we should. So anyhow, to my less sobering parts of my agenda, Latricia and I did attend a pool board meeting. I was wondering if you were going to mention it. Too busy to remember the pool board. And so we did that on the day of our last work session, which is why I think it all got folded up. We are working on reviewing some policy changes to our operations manual, and we've kind of been doing that work throughout the entire year. I was going to say semester, but the whole year, which is, I think, very exciting. And I think staff have been doing a great job with that. Additionally, I was going to give a great talk about how, Karen has been leading this wonderful team at NODC around the SEDS program. And every month at NODC meetings, we attend, at the meeting, they have a presentation from a community group or, a municipality talking about something that they're doing, or basically a cool program that's existing in the community, or a cool new program, future program that we're hoping to have. And so at our last meeting, it was all about the SEDS and a very a deep dive into it. I did send out the draft in an email to council, as well as the link to the feedback. So just in case that folks are really interested in providing that feedback, I did just want to echo that. I know that Karen and the team is really excited to get that from everybody.
Thank you, Navarra. John.
Thanks for giving me time to prep, Mayor. We appreciate that. So I haven't attended any meetings yet. I'm planning on attending the UAC meetings Tuesday, which I'm looking forward to. Since my appointment, I've been trying to be intentional about meeting with our various department heads. So I had a chance to join the police station with Chief Smith and his team. I was really thankful for that. I saw some of my ex-students back there. That was kind of fun to shake their hand and see them do, service. And, as a teacher, seeing them in the class was pretty proud moment. They're great people, and lucky to have them working for us. I met with Deputy Mayor Senator Goings and to kind of learn more about what he does and the IT department, and that was great. I learned a lot. I had a chance to this weekend on Sunday. I actually got to do sit-along and pen. So that was a really great experience. I got to sit down with Levi, one of our dispatchers, who was very informative. But I learned a lot about the systems in place and how much they're doing there, and the teamwork they have back there, and the camaraderie and the calming the pressure with some of these calls was really commendable and fun to watch. And TV doesn't really tell you what it's like back there, and I learned about some of the challenges. And one of the police officers who's been a student saw I was there, came to talk to me. That was great. I had fun time doing that. And then, so I have more scheduled to learn more about the various departments and directors, and just hear about their challenges, successes, their vision. So I've been doing a lot of listening and learning, which has been a really informative experience. So thanks, staff, for giving me the time to come down after school, probably later in the day than you used to. So thanks for being flexible. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Sounds like a lot of input. So glad you're getting a chance to do that. I made a note for myself, but I don't see it now because I was taking other notes. I don't have much of a report. I did, I will just mention, in case I show up on any of their socials, and just for information, I was invited to a meeting with Emily Randall yesterday and some other folks to talk about the impact of the shutdown, the impact of the budget bill. And so just gave her a little bit of information about really focused more on how it's impacting how it has the potential to impact our community and the ways the city has been able to show up for people impacted by the shutdown. And met a couple of people I hadn't met before, so that was nice. And originally I was admittedly a little bit frustrated that it was at Lake Crescent, because I thought I got to leave in the middle of my workday and drive all the way out there. And it was a beautiful day, and it was so nice I was like, if I was in a bigger city, I'd be driving 20 minutes to get to my meeting anyway. So at least this drive is beautiful, and we met outside, and it was really nice, and made it back in time to get some work done before I left early to go to my son's football game. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll turn it over to Nathan.
So Mayor and Council, I want to start out by thanking Deputy City Manager Goings and the CED team for thoroughly covering all of the different points of conversation relative to the comprehensive plan, and really appreciate the great work on that presentation as well as memorandum. I also am excited to share that the city is inviting residents to join our annual Arbor Day celebration on Saturday, October 25th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And volunteers will assist fellow community members by planting street trees in neighborhoods throughout the city. So this year, the city will provide approximately 75 free street trees to residents for planting, and volunteers are needed to plant about 30 trees for residents who have requested assistance. So those interested can submit a volunteer intake form to Courtney Bornsworth, and completed forms can be emailed to Courtney at ced@cityofpa.us or turned into City Hall. And if you're interested in volunteering but can't make it to the event on October 25th, please let us know, because there's other opportunities to volunteer to help out with these trees. Council, in addition to that, I'm excited to say that by the end of the week, you will have a balanced budget as presented by staff. I want to thank the Finance Department for their really hard work on that. It was a very difficult budget to balance this year. And look forward to meeting with Council in the budget work session on October 28th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Council, thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our second public comment period. We do have a couple folks still here, so we'll do council chambers first. If you are still online and wish to make a public comment, please raise your virtual hand either by pressing the raise hand button if you're in the WebEx, or *3 if you're a call-in user. And John, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, John Ralston, City of Port Angeles resident. Somebody left their water here. I'll share it. There might be a shortage. Oh, no, it got called off. I'm proud to hear that Navarre is reading the Port Townsend Leader. My grandfather used to deliver that back around 1913, 1914. So, and we did subscribe to it for a number of years. I wanted to talk about the sidewalk fee in lieu. You've all been copied in on my correspondence, primarily to Jonathan. And it does tie back to one of the items that Lindsay brought back with the Urban Services Manual, that it is a document that gives somebody a lot of authority to make decisions, and you're just sitting there saying, really? So one of my concerns, or of many concerns, is you're going to do at least scheduled to do a second reading of this proposed ordinance on the 21st. And it's going to be published on Friday, a few days ahead of time. And some of you may want to amend it, delay it, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result of me not knowing what's going to happen, similar to the people that were dealing with these energy code changes several years ago and trying to prevent or try to build things under the prior energy code as opposed to the current energy code, which again, I'll comment about it. It's way over the top and generates probably an additional $20,000 or more per home that you're constructing. Anyway, I'm going to be forced to apply for some building permits to prevent some unknown things that are potentially going to happen in this ordinance. I have no idea if I will ever build the projects that I will apply for, but it potentially saves me from changes that could come about, and I would be spending at a minimum of $5,000 more for construction on a lot. So I would encourage you to not probably adopt anything at that point in time, and give people some time to look at some things and time for Public Works to address some things. And my letter may not have been clear to you. And I also am critical of the slide presentation. I don't think that the highlight was fee in lieu, but the guts of it are going to cost a person that wants to just do a single family dwelling on a current existing lot in Port Angeles that's not on a specific type of street. I welcome questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Glenn Barbieri. I'm a city resident in Port Angeles. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things I can respond in this meeting. It's like a bunch of notes. They're color-coded. Yeah, so, So today has been a rather strange day for me in that, one, I ended up being an hour late to an appointment that was probably one of the most important appointments I would have had in about the last 3 years. So reason why was I was reevaluating a goal that I've had for probably over 10 years. See, there's one person in the country who I got in contact with would help me with a lot of things I want to deal with in the past and going forward. And that person would be the commanding officer at Navy Nuclear Power School. Well, today, I figured out a strategy to get hold of that person expeditiously. But then I realized that maybe I've been going about this all wrong, about my goals, about what service I could actually be to my country in that regard. Because the reason why I wanted to get a hold of an individual was based on, 10 more years of where I wanted to be at this time, at some time in the future. Today I realized that's not exactly what we meant. I'm not officially a scientist, but and a number of other things. So I decided on a potential very different course of action. So changing 10 years of plans, as you know, doesn't necessarily turn on a dime. And the other thing, I have finally stopped taking antipsychotic medications. And if anybody there was anything, mental health got briefly mentioned today. So that is a very huge thing about how society and individuals and institutions deal with that. Both with the law, with homelessness, and other matters such as that have been very much on this council's mind, and also considering federal cuts in services and Medicare. We are going to see a tremendous impact on the mental health of our community, particularly with the level of stress. And one provision on that, in closing, stress is one of the major causes of psychotic breaks. So we could see a definite change in the health of the number of citizens because of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any hands online, so we will be adjourned. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you at the work session. Nope, we'll see you on the 21st. Skip the whole month. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Amy. You too.